Mr. Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie. Kim Farah. Dan Guide.
Here.
Sarah Markamer.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Sue Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
Here.
Kelly Ward. Seated at the board table this evening is the superintendent of schools and student representative Nick Belhuli. The presence of other district administrators as well as Timberlane Teachers Association officers will be reflected in the meeting minutes.
Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to take a moment of silence if we could. We did lose a great patriot in the Senate this past week or so. So if we could take a moment to remember Vietnam veteran and Arizona Senator John McCain. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Timberlane Regional School Board meeting of December. I'm already ahead of myself. September 6, 2018, our regular meeting. We've got approval of minutes, so in your packet you should have the draft of the regular board meeting of August 23rd. Is that right, Mrs. Belcher?
That's correct.
Take a look at those. It's like 5 pages, so give yourself a few minutes to look those over, and then I'll listen to our motion to recommend. Entertain a motion when you're ready.
Motion to accept the August 23rd, 2018 minutes.
I'll
By
second.
Mr. Guide,
Second.
Mr. Boyle. Thank you. Any questions, corrections, additions, deletions? If not, I'll call for vote. All in favor? Looks unanimous. Thank you. And do we have a set of anything else tonight?
We have a set of non-public sealed.
Non-public. These are non-public sealed, so these are coming around. Give you a second to look at these, and then we'd be looking for a motion to accept. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept the non-public minutes of August 23rd, 2018.
Motion from Mr. Guide, second.
I'll second.
From Mr. Boyle. All those in favor? unanimous. We are leaving these sealed, so pass these back, I would imagine. Thank you. Nick, tell us about your first week.
Alrighty.
What'd you have for lunch? Did you wear a tie the first day?
Unfortunately, no.
First day of school?
Casual, too hot
Okay,
for
good,
that.
yeah.
Alrighty, so yeah, first of all, hope everyone, high school, middle school, and elementary schools had a great first week. Everyone seems to be excited, so it's looking to be a great year for the whole district. A couple of things for the music and theater departments up at the high school. Tonight is the first night for the new Timberlane Community Chorus, which is very exciting, and we're very excited to see the great things that are going to be done with that group. Timberlane Players productions of Our Town and the Laramie Project have been confirmed for November 7th through 10th, so mark your calendars for these two really amazing shows. Regarding athletics around the district, on September 12th, Danville Elementary has a cross-country meet at Stratham, so a big good luck to them and do your best. Tomorrow night, the Owls football team has an away game versus Exeter. Girls soccer has a home game versus Londonderry. Girls volleyball has a match against Pinkerton at home tomorrow as well. You can check the athletics page on any of the district school websites for more times and details. At the middle school, the 6th grade will be having their annual Camp Lincoln field trip over the next couple of weeks, so have a ton of fun. On the 12th, there will be a technology night hosted at the middle school explaining the types of technology, softwares, programs that are being used to teach students. They highly encourage all parents to attend and learn more about the new educational benefits of these programs. On September 18th, the middle school will also start their Heart and Soul program in an aim to inspire confidence within middle school girls and work and exercise with that as well. And in the end, they'll be running a 5K. They invite all girls from the middle school to join them and train not only your body but your mind. I was on the Pollard website and I discovered a very nice video produced by the students at the school regarding acceptance and overall kindness. I found it to be very educational and put together extremely well by the students. And now that we start a new year, it's more important than ever to educate those in our district about these topics. So I highly recommend parents to show their kids the video and even watch it themselves. It's very well put together, so really good job, the kids at Pollard. And finally, though this is out of the school, Sandown Old Home Day is this weekend, which is bound to be full of excitement and overall fun times. So as a community, let's get together and have a good time.
Nice, thank you, Nick. Sounds great.
Good job, yeah.
Keep going.
Superstar.
We don't have any delegates and individuals tonight. If not, we'll go on to our current business. We have opening of school report. Who's doing that?
Well, I asked, actually Sandy Allaire and Christine Michaud were here tonight to talk a little bit about this. And overall, we had a great opening. We were able to visit all the schools and had an opportunity to meet with staff and students. My highlight was at Atkinson, in one of the classrooms when I went in with Principal Deotis, and they asked the students, they said, do you know who this is? And I said, that's Principal Deotis. And then they pointed to me, they said, do you know who this is? And they said, that's Mr. Deotis. So I'll take that as a compliment.
Yes,
but,
I would.
you know, so
I would.
But it's great. They all did a great job getting ready. And I have to compliment Tom Gary, maintenance staff, custodial staff, everything. The buildings look beautiful. They're clean, they're bright. The outsides, the curb appeal, they just did an outstanding job. So thanks to them. And so Sandy and Christy, it's all yours.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Sandy and Allaire and I are happy this evening to share a report of August 29th, 2018, opening day. We've got some pictures there before you. The schools shared some pictures of students on their first day. We'll also tell you a little bit about what the first days were like for our staff, our new staff, for mentoring and induction days, as well as the professional development days, and then that August 29th day for students. All of those pictures there sort of share some of the highlights, which is really exciting. In your packets this evening, you received a document summarizing each of the school's opening day. Along with those summaries, you also receive some detailed information, including enrollment and attendance numbers, highlights of the first days, any of the challenges that might have been encountered, and just basically an overall summary of the first day for each of the schools. Also, our transportation coordinator, Sandy Hodgkins, she also provided you with a little summary of busing for both First Student and Durham buses. I do want you to know that Sandy is expected to share some additional information with regard to transportation with you in an upcoming meeting. Other than that, what you have there in your packet, Sandy and I are going to share some of the positive things that have started out our school year. We welcome several new staff members at this year's new teacher orientation and induction days. These days in late August were filled with new information and opportunities for teachers to acclimate to the district. Lots of information about our district's technology and Power School, curricula documents, our supports and services for students. Those were 4 full days for our teachers to go through the induction and the new teacher orientation. So they were great days, lots of great opportunities to welcome our teachers, but also to orient them to our district. Following the new teacher induction in late August, our entire professional staff joined together on Monday, August 27th. Our para-educators began on August 28th, that Tuesday, for 2 professional development days and 1 day that was focused more on the individual buildings. The PD days offered professional learning and support for all groups of professionals. We included training for not only our classroom teachers, but our specialists and our counselors. Topics included guided math and science instruction, training for our teachers, topics of social emotional learning, and lots of collaborative curriculum work also took place during those days. We received very positive feedback as teachers felt that those days were meaningful and productive and a great way to start their new school year. Also want to just a shout out to our entire admin team. Lots and lots of planning took place, and planning and preparation took place to ensure that those days were well organized and that they were the trainings were meaningful and relevant to our teachers. And so they did a great job with that. Also, a few of our schools, they hosted open houses in those first days before the first day of school. Those evenings were very well attended. Parents were full of compliments regarding the conditions of our building and the grounds. As Dr. Metzler said, kudos to our maintenance and custodial staff as they certainly put in lots of time and effort to make sure that our schools looked great for the very first day. So Sandy's going to share a few of the highlights from the individual schools.
Hi, good evening. I'm grateful to all of our building principals for sharing some highlights from their schools, and I'm going to convey in large part what they shared with us. So across the district, the first day was marked by great enthusiasm, positive energy, and a real sense of community across the district and all of our schools. In all buildings, staff greeted students outside as they departed from the buses or arrived in car pickup, made them feel welcome, helped students navigate into their new buildings if it was their first time entering that space, and make them really feel welcomed. So all of our schools have also begun to roll out new yearly themes. So at TLC at Sandown Central, this year's theme is kindness and gratitude. Staff and administration work together to ensure that all of our little owls, as they refer to them, and all members of the community know that they are OWL, an important part of the school, is how they refer to it. Sandown North, or our North Stars, rolled out their new theme, which is called Camping Under the Stars. And staff over the summer were incredibly creative in creating displays on their bulletin boards in their classrooms, in the hallways, to really convey this theme to students as they entered the building and to get them excited for a great start to the year. The comment was that the building was full of happy campers on that day. Atkinson Academy is also off to a great start. The school will continue to reinforce last year's theme of kindness and will soon begin rolling out activities in support of this year's new theme, which is challenge. Despite the heat, we all know it was a hot couple of days as we started the school last week. The building was full of smiling faces. Everyone persevered through that and maintained a really positive outlook. The school also already successfully completed their first fire drill of the year, which is great. At the Danville School, staff welcomed students and provided escorts to any students in need. The building was in immaculate condition as we spoke to the building grounds and the space inside. Bulletin boards were decorated with positive, encouraging, and inspiring messages as students arrived. At that building, students and staff have begun to work together on their theme of kindness and self-respect. So you'll see a lot of commonalities between the elementary schools around that theme of kindness. Day one at the Pollard School was highlighted from a visit from Dr. Metzler. Throughout the day, numerous students engaged in activities to activate both their bodies and stimulate their mind. Staff and students are excited about their new theme, which is "Without grit, there is no pearl," which conveys the importance of perseverance to all students as they persevere through challenges. At the middle school, the theme for day one was "Getting to Know You." So all staff were outside as students departed the buses. They greeted them as they entered the building. And then they began to engage in a lot of team building activities. As you know, our students are on teams at the middle school. So day one was really focused on getting to know one another, collaborating together, and then they started to delve into some exciting new projects in their unified arts classrooms as well. The high school is excited to continue with last year's Win the Day theme, which was a new thing for the high school last year, having a building theme, and I think it went really well. So prior to day one, the high school hosted its annual freshman orientation, which was on Tuesday evening, August 28th. The counseling department and all of the teachers worked together to welcome 94% of the incoming freshmen and their families on that evening, which I think is an exceptional number if you think about attendance. And it really set a really positive tone for the school year that carried over into day one when all staff and students arrived for the start of the school year. Staff and administration on day one were present in the hallways to help students to navigate the building. As you know, it's a much larger space for some students. If they're freshmen, finding lockers can be a challenge, knowing where the cafeteria is and who you're going to sit with for lunch. Everyone was there to support students through those transitions. This counseling staff did a lot of work over the summer to meet with students to make any scheduling adjustments, which prevented the need for any or many scheduling changes on day one. Senior parking was also very successful, I was told. Because of the heat, there were some athletic teams that had to change or move back practices or competitions. But other than that, despite the hot weather, day one was a very positive experience at the high school. So I think as you can tell from the photos, students and staff across the district left buildings feeling excited, really enthused and energized for a great new year of learning and bonding as a community. So.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thanks, that was great, ladies. Talk to me about, did they, at the middle school and high school, did they go right into their extended learning block time the first day? Did they start that way, or did they do, what do they call it, a midi flex day? They have another
A
time for that?
skinny day, yeah.
Skinny.
I believe at
Skinny.
high school, business as usual, it was an A day in
Good.
both buildings, so students began their first schedule, and sometimes teams at the middle school have flexibility to have a slightly
Right.
modified schedule, so there may have been a couple teams that extended time to be able to engage in team building, but it was business as usual, starting right off fresh.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yep.
Anyone else, questions about the first day? Brian?
I just got a question. Congratulations, I guess you're all enthusiastic, that's good.
We are. It's been a great start.
So you're, I'm just curious in terms of like, because you, Chris, you usually track the student population, is pretty much what you expected?
Yes, yes,
So
yep.
wherever you get your
no
information
real-
from, it pretty much came in what you thought was gonna happen?
Yeah, right. We shared the enrollment report with you folks 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
those numbers were very similar to the opening school numbers, yes,
Good.
that we predicted and to Power School, yeah.
Great.
Anybody else?
And I think, and then from staffing perspective, I mean, we're
Yep.
pretty much staffed, but we do have several openings that we're still recruiting and,
It's paraprofessional positions. We're still seeking to fill several paraprofessional positions, but professional staff positions, we've done a nice job. We had a great hiring season, as I shared with you at your last meeting.
So along those lines, Dr., are those, what do you have, temporary people filling those slots? If you,
Well, in terms of the paras, building principals manage that.
They do.
Until such
Yep.
time they can find a full-time para. So whether it's a substitute para or whether they have to use existing paras and change their responsibilities a bit just to get through. The special ed needs are unique, so I think they have unique challenges as principals to make sure that those needs are being met. But other than that, I think, if people are watching and they want to get in this business, we do have some para positions, and it's a great way to get into the education field. And
We welcome people to apply, absolutely.
There you go. Nice little ad, there you go.
Well, we thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good job. Strategic plan?
Yeah, we're moving on to strategic plan. You remember that we received the draft back on June 21st, and we decided to hold off until Dr. Wilson could be with us to present the plan. And I think it gave us a really good chance to study it ourselves and to certainly write up some questions. I have a whole series, and I'm sure some of the rest of you do too, have notes, things you want to. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wilson, ready to present, and then we can chat and see where we're going next.
Sure, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here today. This is the work of a culmination of 2 years, and it's a lot of work that has been expended from people from the district, the community, and the board. And so I'm pleased to say that, this is the action that we're looking for tonight, is that the board support and approve the strategic plan. I want to thank the board members, the staff, and community members who participated, and special thanks for some of the board members past who are not here today, but Peter Belo and Greg Spiro, who were involved in this as we started this process. And for those of, the audience sake, I would just like to remind them, the strategic plan is really, it's a way for us to set the direction, to set the focus, and to set the priorities for the school district. We use it for a variety of purposes. Usually they're about 5 years. We use it for resource allocation, for priorities of goal setting, and as a district administrator, it really helps us to be able to focus and zero in on some important work. So the strategic plan process really is a process of self-reflection for the district, and at the same time thinking about the future. So it's a little bit hindsight and foresight, and that's what we did for quite a bit of the year last year. I do want to thank the Strategic Planning Committee, and just want to mention some names so that people recognize the work. We met almost monthly. This is the committee that Brian Boyle was with board chair at the time when he was on the committee. Eileen Doobie, who was also a member of the community and was also sitting on the budget committee. Dr. Kim Farah, the vice chair of the board at the time. Tom Geary, district operation coordinator. Ken Henderson, our district technology person, director. Christy Michaud, director of assessment. Jim Paul, who was also a community member and represented the budget committee, and myself. So we were the planning committee that really set the tone in terms of the work that needed to be done. And we couldn't have done it without the committee's presence. This is a process, and I think most of you know that I'm a process person, so I was really kind of attuned to trying to keep this within the year's time that we had planned. If you look at page 1, it talks about the process a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole report. I just want to reflect it, especially for the audience. The process that we took is we did a large community survey that took some time to really develop the questions so that we knew that we were asking the right questions. We wanted to make sure and test the waters a little bit to see whether or not the community was satisfied with our mission, our vision, and our beliefs. And those are the foundations of any type of a program. So we tested the waters to see whether or not the community was satisfied. And in the report, as a result, you'll see that we had 750 responses. And through the analysis of that, Many were very positive and felt that it was a strong foundation. So the mission, the vision, the beliefs are still a strong kind of underlayment foundation for us to continue to work with. So that was, I think, a really good exercise to start with the process. We also held 2 community forums, very well advertised. We had one, we tried to do it more centrally located here in Plastow. We had another one, we said in the North Campus up in Sandown. And so we had a community forum and we had it facilitated so that community members could come and talk about what's important to them, what were the things that they felt were important. And so we had a lot of good voices from the community there. We also had 2 open forums with the staff. One was at Atkinson Academy, but everybody could go. It was open to anyone. We also had one in Plastow. That allowed the staff to be able to vocalize and give their opinions in terms of what they felt were our priorities coming through. The report that you have in front of you is really kind of divided into some sections, different sections. The very first is really a section of self-reflection, and we call that the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's the SWOT analysis that some of you may be familiar with. It's really a needs assessment of where we started in 2017. So we looked at all sorts of things. Every department looked at where they are and where they were. And they, through some self-reflection, analyzed what are our opportunities, what are our threats, what are those things that are the barriers to getting some of the work done. And through that, we came up with a recurring theme that seemed to be coming out of all 3 of the different activities, the forums, the survey, and the analysis that we did. And the 3 themes that our committee looked at became really clear that there was a strong presence of academic rigor that community members and staff felt was a really strong focus that we needed to keep doing. That wasn't a surprise because we know that there's been a lot of focus on academic rigor over the last few years. The facilities and grounds came up. That seemed to be a theme from the last previous plan. It still is an emerging theme that came through all of our work. And what came out for this 3rd theme was the culture and climate. For us to continue to work on the culture and the climate within the schools so that it's a very positive place for kids and staff. So those were the things that I think the valuable piece of the analysis that came through this whole process. And as we went through our goal setting as a committee, we realized we really needed to have people at the table who were responsible for these types of activities in the district. So we set up some subcommittees, and there was a subcommittee for the academic rigor that was actually chaired by Christy Michaud. Parent representatives on that committee as well. We set up another committee. Tom Gary chaired that one. Again, representation from the community, and that was looking at the facilities and grounds. And then the 3rd committee, Sue Rassico, chaired that committee. And it was really a committee of looking at, okay, so here we are, this is what we're here for. What are our goals that we have to set forth in order to have us be successful in 5 years? And those committees came up with some goals that you see in here and some objectives underneath. And that's really the work of what we're attempting to do in the next 5 years. All of those goals and activities are described in pages 14 and 21. They're pretty detailed because we also wanted to have some type of a timeline of when that would be a focus area, because we are talking about 5 years. So some of the work is done immediately, and some of the work is going to take some time in terms of the objectives that were set out. The other thing that I thought was important was the communication piece. And if you look at the last page of your report, it says strategic plan in a glance. And what this is sometimes these reports are pretty hard to read. But if you have a one-pager that you can say with what's the essential information that we can deliver to parents, that we can deliver to students, we can deliver to staff. It tells you that we have one mission. It tells you that we have one vision, and it spells it out there. That we have 5 goals, and these are the goals that were developed by the committees. And the 9 beliefs that the community feels are steadfast to the work that we do here in Timberlane. So this is our attempt as the committee to say, okay, in essence, this is the strategic plan. And it's a little bit more detailed as you get into the report. The next steps, again, we would hope from approval from the board. We're going to establish the 3 action teams from those 3 different committees. We already have, the work is already started, which means it's really aligned with what we wanted to do as far as academic rigor and culture and community and facilities. But we will begin it in earnest once this is approved. And we'll start working on goals and objectives. It also allows you to have some direction to be able to use for budget allocation as well. So I'd be glad to answer any questions, and certainly, the folks who have been involved with this committee as well can assist.
I'm going to let Dr. Wilson answer questions, but I'm going to start, if I could. Dr. Wilson, on page 13, my school teacher's coming out. You called this goals, but it's really speaking about the 3 themes. Is it not? So I guess I would like it to say Roman numeral V1, goals and themes. I just think it speaks to the themes, and then the goals are the next page. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, I think that this whole section is about the goals, and the goals we got from the themes.
Okay.
So if you think it's clearer, I'd be glad to make that change.
If anyone reads this to the depth that some of us have read it, that those are the themes, those are the 3 themes, and then on page 14, we flesh it out to the goals and the objectives. So it's 3 themes, 5 goals, 12 objectives, and 12 plus action plans, if I counted them all up as we went along. So that was one thing I would ask, that perhaps we could just make a adjustment of that particular word.
Okay.
Just strike it and call it themes?
I prefer it would be themes,
So don't
or
call
at
it-
least add themes. And then on page 11,
14 is where the goals actually start. So I'll just make a header there calling it.
14, it starts the goals. 13 is
goals,
is
yeah.
the themes.
Okay.
Because it says 3 themes emerged.
3 themes. I want
Yeah,
page
well, that's, I was just reading
13 to
that
be
first
themes,
paragraph
not
says
goals.
3 themes emerged, so that aligns with 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on page 11, you've got it, mission, beliefs, and vision. It should be mission, vision, beliefs. That would align with the way it's set up. I'm a process person too, sometimes. So the title you've got is mission,
Yes, I got
beliefs,
it.
and vision. You have your vision first, vision in the middle.
on that one.
I can make that change.
Okay. And I've got a couple others, but I'm gonna let the board ask questions and then come back around. Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. I just had a question on the timelines. When it talks about school years 18, 19, is that to be completed 18, 19, or are we starting 18,
Starting in
19?
18, 19.
Yeah, it's where we focus the energy is, that is the start. So we have a lot of stuff going on this year.
But it doesn't mean it has to be, it could be finished in 18, 19, but it could also go into the next year.
Well, some of them look
Which
like
is
they
why
carry
they're,
through.
you know,
Carry
they're
through, yeah.
carry all the way through, because that's, and this is somewhat flexible, depending upon, when the committees start getting into their work. Some of this might be done in a year as opposed to 3 years. It really depends on the work and what we're able to accomplish. It was our best efforts, I guess.
Sarah.
So going through this, I noticed there's a number of action steps in the academic rigor section. I think there's 5 different steps focused on teacher training, professional development, just that are supposed to begin or be completed this year alone. Are those items or topics that would be put into action through the committee? Just concerned, it just seemed like a lot of professional development.
Some of it's already being worked on.
Some of it, yes, and I noticed some of it did seem to be
Yeah.
getting worked on already, but even still, there was 5 different sections and then another independent, self-initiative, professional development and learning, and it just seemed like a lot to get started in
Yeah.
1 year.
Well, and that's, if it seems like a lot when the committee gets into gear, that's one of the things they're gonna have to look at. And that's why some of these things are pretty flexible. Maybe we start it in January as opposed to, October.
Yeah, and I'm all for professional development. I was just, it just seemed like it might be overwhelming for the teachers, like how it gets prioritized, who does the training, how does it get to some, it just,
And that will be the work of the committee, is to figure out, is this, training, do we do it through PLCs? Do we do it through coaching? Do we do it through a professional development day?
Okay.
There's different vehicles to
already doing it?
deliver. Yeah.
Okay, and
And
just reading through it, like I said.
Yeah,
was
no,
just like,
I
whoa.
appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just some of the work in this strategic plan, it's like standard operating procedure. So this work would be happening with or without the strategic plan. It's nice that this validates or reinforces or systemically helps us with it.
Right,
But,
focus.
so it may seem like a lot of work, but I think, there's obviously some new things in here, but some of it would have been work that would have been going on anyway.
Okay,
So some of that professional development would happen in every district, everywhere.
okay.
Kim, yes.
So you mentioned that some of it's new work and some of it's ongoing, and I'd like the superintendent to speak more to the plan itself in terms of resource allocation and goal setting as we move forward in the plan, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of the plan with regards to that?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to speak to that this evening. At some point in the future, once you approve it, I'll certainly take a look at that and report back.
Can I just follow up?
Sure, Kim.
So, Dr. Wilson, you mentioned the committee, you mentioned what we are attempting to do. We had a CIP meeting last night. We had quite a bit of discussion about the fact that the CIP is really, correct me if I'm wrong, in a holding pattern.
We're hoping to dovetail us all this together. 'cause
And that
we're in a
makes
holding
perfect
pattern.
sense. It makes
Until-
perfect sense.
Until
Yeah.
we have this strategic plan. So who is the we and who is the committee? Because I'm a little vague here.
When I say we, I usually mean the district. So that's us, administrative, the SLT, the administrative team, moving some of this work. The committees do that because there's always a person from SLT who is represented in these subcommittees.
What subcommittees are we referring to?
The 3 that we have focused on here, the one for academic rigor, which will be Christy Michaud, the one with culture and climate, which will be Sue Rassico.
Are you assuming those same people will still be on? There could be some changes?
There'll be some changes, because this was the strategic planning committee. These are the committee
is the
chairs who are gonna
implementing.
move this work.
Implementation.
Implementation
Yeah,
of
once-
this now.
Once you have an approved plan, the superintendent's leadership team will take a look at it and start to do the work that Dr. Farah speaks of.
I think I called them action teams in here.
You did, you called them action teams. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. Who's
Is
the
that what
action
you're
team? Yes, you did.
I guess I am, because I'm a little unclear as to whose strategic plan this is. Because at the last, or previous school board meeting, I thought I heard the superintendent say this was the school board strategic plan. And that's concerning to me because I thought it was the district strategic plan. So I'm
School
trying to
board voted
clarify.
to actually take over the strategic planning. That would make it your plan. Our work would be to execute your plan. The strategic plan, if you remember correctly, the board voted to take over the strategic planning.
I was not on the board at that
Yeah, they
time.
did.
Yeah, well, that's
And
what
that was
happened.
way back in
Well, to
2015.
say
Year
that
before.
if I remember correctly would be an incorrect assertion. Since I was not on the board, I could not remember that vote,
Oh,
so.
I'm
just
sorry,
clarifying.
I'm assuming that you were paying attention to the work in the district, even when you weren't on the board.
So,
No, I was
so-
paying to the work of my town because
So
I was
this
on
is
our
the
select board.
districts, this is ours. The districts the school boards, the administrations. Let's be much more collaborative in our view. We have to work together in these three areas to pull this off. There'll be some things we won't get to. It happened. It happened every strategic plan I've ever been in. There's something like, oh, we couldn't get to that. We didn't have the resources. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the time. We didn't have the space. But it's a vision. It helps to support our vision. I love this last page, in fact, Dr. Wilson. I think this is what you should put on a pretty laminated thing and put this all out. This should be what people see on our website. And then if they want to dig into more detail, of course. But this is very positive kinds of statement, and it comes from our community. Brian?
Okay. Thank you. Good job as always. Kind of piggyback on what Kim was talking about, that it was, this topic came up last night at CIP, and I think what's happening is the academic portion is already in the works, is ongoing. I think this board, as a board, has to make sure, because we are now in the budget season, we have to stay like right on the capital improvement part, really the money part of the strategic plan, because it's got to tie in. And well, for those at home watching, we had a CIP meeting last night, and so myself, there was whatever 6 to 8 of us there, whatever it was, and we're now that time of year. So when the department heads or the SLT team is coming forward with their request, and now you're looking at items that are $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. We've got to see how these tie in to our facilities plan. So I believe that, if I understand this right, you guys are waiting for the school board to adopt this, and then, because probably Tom Gary would be the facilities person that would head that up. I would like to stay part of that committee, because I think this is a big thing here. So to me, we got to get on the same page. So as we get into the budget season, we know what we're going to be doing this year, the following year, because I believe we have 2 years left in our bond, I believe. So we have to decide as a district. We got to get ready to go out to see what is the next investment we're going to make, and it should spin off this document. But I think we need we need the added oomph from the superintendent's office to make sure that, and you've already, Tom will be the focal point of that, but obviously we got to get on that same page of what we are all doing here facility-wise.
I mean, and that is a section of this report, is that facility section. And we need to get those action teams ready and going. It says by October. Well, we're not to October yet. I don't see there's any reason why we can't get those action teams ready and set and on their role for facilities. I'm speaking as the chairman of CIP, to get it going. We need that going if we're going to try to get any money this year.
I think, just to respond to Mr. Boyle, that I understand the need for this, and I think this is one of the big reasons why we were trying to work on this to completion for both the academic and the facilities piece. But I think also understand this is a process as well.
Absolutely.
This is to develop a master plan for facilities, so it isn't going to be done overnight. It's probably going to be done to inform us in the next budget cycle. So, some of that is going to be worked through this year, but it doesn't prevent us from working with the CIP like we always have.
Right, but that came up last night. It will come up quite a bit over the next 90 to 120 days. Is how does this fit in with your strategic plan at CIP? There are some items on the CIP that you just can't wait, and there are some items that you're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years.
You've got a master
So
plan
let's see how it ties in.
That's right.
Well, we've got the first step going here. We need to get this approved or voted on, that we're supporting this, and then get these teams set up. Jen?
I have no problem supporting the strategic plan. I can't help but feel a little bit concerned about, and maybe it's my interpretation of it, but it seems like there's a bit of, I don't know if animosity is the right word, but this should be a plan for the district, not us, them, we,
I said we.
you. No, I understand, but the whole tenor of some of the comments felt very negative. And I would just like to make sure that, once if we adopt this, that we all, as a district, support this and buy into this and really work together to make this happen.
I agree with you 100%. Kim, something else?
I don't think, I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think
Good.
your concern was with the chair, was it?
No.
Something else about
Yes, I
strategic
do.
plan, anybody? Go ahead,
I
Kim.
do.
Yeah.
My concern about approving this evening, there are two reasons. Well, there are more than two reasons, but I'll keep it to two. One, I really would like, and I know we had the public in the initial forums, and I know we had 3 large subcommittees that did an enormous amount of work that have not seen the draft of the plan. I feel that there should be some announcement or opportunity for the public to weigh in. Perhaps more importantly than that is that based on the TTA climate survey from last year, where the survey results indicated that the TTA, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Richmond, did not feel neither that this board nor the superintendent was heading this district in the right direction. For us to approve a 5-year strategic plan without having any more weigh-in from the TTA or the outside groups, I just think is disingenuous when we're looking at something that we want the community to buy into. And that's not negating the work that we've done, but I think it would be helpful to hear from the public. I know people in the public have asked me about this plan, but they haven't had an opportunity to weigh in on the written plan. The only time that I'm aware of that they've had an opportunity to weigh in is during those community forums. Am I
And
incorrect?
surveys. They got to do the survey, right?
But
The survey?
that was before the plan was
Right,
started.
so now, how are we going to, I agree with you, how are we going to let these people that served on these subcommittees know that we've got it packaged up? They haven't seen it. They have not seen this packaged, I don't believe.
No, because this was going
Right.
to the board.
So once it's approved, they need to see it, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And they should be, I think they should have a chance to say, I'm done, thanks, I enjoyed being on that section of the subcommittee, but I'm not moving on.
They've
But-
seen their
But-
sections.
Right, they've seen their section.
Yes, they
Okay,
have.
okay, right. But they don't, we should have some more public forums. I really agree with Kim. We need to have some more public opportunities. But it doesn't change the fact that we're supporting a strategic plan. We want to support this, but we want them to be, they're going to have to buy in if we're going to complete the mission, vision, and beliefs.
Approve it as a draft.
Well, that's what I was gonna recommend, is that we would do it as a draft, and we actually hold a special school board public hearing, that we would probably get a lot of people from the community, find a night where the pack is available, that we can use that facility, and have everybody be able to comment on this document. And there's a lot of great work that's been done in it. It's been the aggregate of all the meetings that were put together, that were
Right.
done. All that's put down there. This is like draft 1 of it. Let people.
Oh, I think this
I mean,
is,
it's probably been multiple drafts,
yeah.
but I mean, the one that's coming to us to be accepted, and then, take the feedback from everybody that is coming there. And I would, to fall back on what your comments were, Dr. Farah, I really think that the TTA should be, having an official comment on this. I mean, this is,
have membership on the board.
this is exactly.
They've had
They had
every
membership on the
opportunity
committee.
to participate,
So
as
would we
the
want
staff
to
did.
take, I'm sorry, Dr. West, would we want to take this draft under advisement with the codicil of having an open forum? I prefer forum than hearing, forum where public can come, we publicize this, they could come and see it, come and read it first, come and talk to us about it, if they have some things that they want to add that they didn't before. Danny?
What if we, sorry, I'm just trying to open my calendar. What if we approve this as draft, or we vote on it for draft 1 and then say at, that's October 4th,
Yeah,
set that as the date for approval?
And have a.
Have a forum in
have the-
between then.
Have a public forum.
In between then, but try to, I'd like to set dates on this because it just
Yeah,
keeps
we-
going,
yeah,
you know
we
what I
wanna
mean?
get-
So, I'm willing to make the motion to accept it as draft one with the date of October 4th that'll be brought back to the board, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Only if we're gonna have a public forum
Right.
between now and the 4th. Not that it, we need,
right.
let the public come if they have some things they want to
Which
talk about.
I absolutely encourage, I mean, I'd like that too. But I'd like to set a date on it. I don't want to just leave it open-ended.
Right. I'm sorry,
That's
Jen.
okay. Dr. Wilson, I feel like this is taking a little bit of a beating, and I think everybody appreciates all the hard work that you put into this. I know I was on the facilities
Yes, yes.
subcommittee one, and I honestly, I don't recall seeing this before.
The little sections.
Yeah, before it was a draft, and I feel like some other members of the public that were on other subcommittees have asked me the same thing. Like, is it on the website somewhere so we can look at it?
No,
so we
I've
can
not
see it?
publicized it
And that's what I've
because
said, it's a draft.
It needed
and we
to
had
come to the board
approve it.
first.
Right,
Makes sense?
but I think so many people in the public, did weigh in on it that they might want to see it, and I don't think it's because they don't support it or approve it. I know, I can't speak for the whole board, but
I think 750 people, right? 750 people
Yeah.
participated?
In the
That's an
survey.
excellent survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know our firms weren't as hugely,
I
Always-
hate to hold this up anymore
I
because
know,
I really,
I
I
do too. I
just
feel that way
do
too.
want to approve it, but
I do too. Kim, and then back to Dan.
I agree with Jen. I don't necessarily want to hold this up, but you're looking to get the community engaged in accepting of this plan and to just have the board
Support of this plan.
supporting it. Well, and ultimately, hopefully, an acceptance of it if they've had the opportunity. And just as we did with the community forums, I think we need to publicize it in terms of, I don't know, maybe sending a phone call out saying when this is going to be held so that people have the opportunity, because that's important, that the community understands that we want their input.
Well, may
ahead,
I
go.
respond? I think the other thing, if you're going to go down this route for a public forum, which I think is, if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but I think the school board needs to be represented. And it hasn't always happened through the process, when some of the community events were held. So, because this isn't my strategic plan. I'll be glad to attend and to help, support it, but really it needs to be some of you answering the questions. I think that's where it needs to be, the ownership needs to kind of move to the board. And this is the first step.
Danny?
All right, so I'm gonna make a motion to accept the strategic plan as a draft. I don't think we have to number it. And to hold a forum between now and October 4th. Can we just have Kathy do a board poll and figure out what dates might work and go from there? And we don't really actually have to set a date tonight, but, and then try to advertise it, but with the October 4th meeting, it's right back on our,
Are you calling it a public hearing, or are you calling it a forum?
I don't think I would call it a public hearing, I think I would call it a forum.
That changes things, correct?
Yeah.
Why would it change? That's just semantics.
Changes the
There's no
notice.
It just,
Notice,
Changes
a public
the
hearing
notice.
is an official
We have-
meeting that you have to
yeah,
post
we
a
have to
certain way, and there's certain
post it.
things you have to do. A forum is very
It's
different.
only by RSA though. For RSA says you have to hold a public hearing for
Right.
a particular
And
item.
so I don't wanna call
You
it a
have to
hearing.
follow it this way for doing that. We could call anything.
I'd like to
that-
call it a forum. I think that's,
Fine.
we're just looking for information, for
Both terms were
input.
thrown out there, that's why I'm
Just want to
clarifying.
hear, I just
I just think that we
hearing
shouldn't be
somebody.
holding it here. I'd like to see.
Oh, we
the-
can find a bigger facility.
That's what I,
Yeah.
So, that's my motion.
So, all right, so can we get a second?
I'll second it.
Brian seconds. Discussion about Dan's and Brian's motion. Jen?
So if we're gonna have a forum that, and I think, like you said, the board should own part of that and be there. If we end up with a quorum of the board, then are we in a situation where posting of a meeting.
Posted, it'd be posted.
I mean, it would be posted anyway,
But
but
it's gonna be posted anyways, and
That's okay.
maybe
it's
televised,
posted.
but, I mean,
Maybe we
you
can
can
even
do that. You can have a quorum of the board and have discussions and stuff like that. I mean, if it's recorded or whatever, it's fine.
could we do it an hour before one of our upcoming school board meetings?
Well, the next meeting is the 20th. You want to push it to the 20th? See if we can get a place for it? Does that give enough?
6:30 or 6
Gives us,
o'clock
give us enough time to have a
on the 20th.
place for it and then get us over here for the meeting?
This is one of the most strategic documents we're.
I agree,
pun
I
intended.
agree.
It's the master plan equivalent at a town level. I mean, I could see a lot of people wanting to have talking to be, have a finite time of an hour and that's it, you know, sorry folks, we gotta go. Just, I wouldn't wanna see that,
So
so.
you gotta figure out how long you're gonna let it go.
No,
think
I understand that, but if we dedicate a particular day with the facility and the board comes to that meeting.
Could
Well,
not
if
have
it's
our
the
meeting on the
20th, the
20th.
pack is open, according to this.
This is just the
just
music
saying.
and drama, though.
Whatever. Yeah, I don't, let's not get into that
Could not
again.
have our meeting on the 20th.
They're showing a football game there.
Oh, that won't work.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm sure we can figure it out.
Okay.
All right, so that's the motion. Mrs. Belcher, would you read back the motion?
Mr. Guide, motion to accept the strategic plan as a draft and to hold a public forum between now and the October 4th meeting, seconded by Mr. Boyle.
Okay? All in favor? That's unanimous.
Clarifying question?
Sure,
Can you hold the forum with less than 5 board members there?
yes,
Why not?
yes.
would think so.
The board is not gonna make any decisions, but I would still recommend that we post it as
So
you
if
know, a
we're,
board
if
meeting
all
so that
9
we
of us
would
are
meet the
there,
requirement
which would be
if we were
great,
there.
right.
I would also say that it should be televised.
sponsored.
So that we could, you know,
Televised
if
if
a board
we
member's
can.
not there, they'd be able to see all the people's comments later on.
Would you want to do it in lieu of the 20th meeting?
No,
Have-
I would think that this is a special, something special. I would like to, at least from
Right,
my
so-
viewpoint, I'd like to see it treated.
We got to find a night that's going to be, you know,
Correct.
a Friday night doesn't work. For the community, you got to think about the community too. Is there a night
Is a
that's gonna-
Saturday morning better?
Well,
Is a Saturday morning better?
Sorry.
what if you delay, what if you had change your agenda there for your 20th meeting, if you need an extra half an hour? I don't see this going on for a couple hours.
I
see
didn't
what you're
either,
saying,
Brian, but
is do
that's
it
why I
like
said, could we
6 or
do it an
6:30,
hour
and if it's
before?
And all of a sudden, if we're half an hour late, so the school board meeting starts a half an hour late, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, started at 6.
Started at 6?
But
Why do
it's,
we even have to move if you're gonna do that? Just stay right there and.
well, that's
Have our
fine
meeting
too.
there?
True.
That's fine, yeah, that's fine, that's
Have our
easy.
meeting
School board
at the
meeting could
PAC
be
if we
there.
can get the. yeah.
That's fine, but I don't see 200 or 300 people
Meeting
showing
at the
up. this.
PAC's not ideal primarily because it's hard to, the configuration thing, it's not a great place for, we've had meetings there.
This
We
is
also have to be
long.
sensitive to negotiations on a Thursday night because we have negotiations in the afternoon. There's like an overlap, get a couple of board members involved in that. So you gotta pick I'm not sure the night of a board meeting is the best night,
Okay.
because you
Valid?
know what I mean?
Can we, we could discuss this all night, what would be the best night? Can I do a little bit of work and see what we can find and get back to you? I'll have Kathy get
Figure
back
it
to you.
out
about-
and-
Here's a couple options, how we could work it in.
I agree with that.
All right.
Also gonna get this document posted on the website so
Yeah.
that we could.
I need to do that part.
We need to have it say
We can now-
draft.
We can now.
We can
typically-
now.
We typically don't post documents that the board hasn't seen
Yeah,
yet.
we hadn't even, well, we'd seen, but not really had a chance to discuss. So we'll put it as, this is a draft and advertise the
As long as
date
it's
of
gonna be
the
up there.
forum. And thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
Nice
Thank you
job.
for all your work.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, moving along to budget update. Are you putting these things into this talk? Treasurer's report and, okay, that's in yours, okay.
front of you, you have
Well, good evening, members of the board. My name is Jeff Dowd. I am the business administrator and CFO here at Timberlane. As part of our monthly, or as part of your meetings, as soon as I have our financials available, I'd like to have a review on those. You have our current Timberlane expenditures in front of you at the moment. Since we've been reviewing these all along, I've been trying to find the best way to present some proposed budget changes. So you have the Timberlane expenditures report to date. What I've done is I've taken that report and merged into it our prior year and some budget shifts that I'd like to review. Am I trying to keep to the same format? It came in a little smaller than I would have thought, and I should have done landscape again, so I apologize on that. You can see all the normal columns. I think that this document probably is of significant value, though, to the board because, one, we're familiar with the format, reviewing it on a regular basis. Two, this format has an ability for me to be able to include the 2018 final numbers, which you'll see to the right, our GL budget as we have it as it stands now, our range of spending to date, year-to-date spending, that budget balance, the encumbrance, and then the remaining budget balance after encumbrance. And you'll see in the far right-hand column a 2019 GL budget with some proposed changes, and you'll see on the far right corner a delta, which is the difference. And my apologies, I should have put this on legal size paper, not the letter size. Overall, I don't think that the budget is in terrible shape. I think the direction that the board has been going in trying to accomplish where we are, where we should be with the funding that we have, I don't think that we're overall in bad shape. I would recommend, however, moving, I'll just highlight the larger aspects, the 100 function code, 1100, 112, salaries teachers. We have currently in that account budgeted 16,568. I know that there had been some restructuring going on, some positions that had been merged. That's resulted in some savings. You can see the 2018 year-to-date 15,500. GL budget, I would propose at 15,200, which is a savings of about 1.368 million. Overall, there are some things to clean up. I had been moving some replacement equipment into, or new replacement equipment budget into new equipment. Moving some teacher salaries around if a function had moved as a result of that. I think the biggest items that we had were, and can be found on the last page, which were to, or second to last page, were to fund our, oh, they ended up on the last page, okay, which were to fund our student transportation, and which is about 227,000 additional to what we had been budgeted, and to move around some of the equipment and capital costs that we had in the 4,600 account level, which is again on the last page, taking that down, shifting some of that to our site improvement account, and shifting some of the equipment costs as well. So overall, I don't think we're in terrible shape. I think that if you'll notice at the bottom, the fund transfers, you'll note that I'm proposing for food service 1.275 budget. That we're at about 1,350,000. Federal funds, we had 1,167,000. I'm proposing 1,250,000. And for PAC transfers, 35,000. Of course, the voters voted in the 250, or would be voting in, could be voting in the 250. So what I'm proposing is largely just shifting where the board has done a very good job reallocating funds and just shifting some of those funds around to where we can best utilize them. So I understand you're just being presented this for the first time, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to be able to get the comparative data for you in a form that you're familiar with. I hope this is it. If you'd like to discuss, I'm more than happy to. If you'd like to take a vote at a later point, feel free to. I'm open to any of that. I can probably get the report on a larger page for you as well.
Don't you have more than this? Don't we have more than this? What was the budget? Not 72.1. What was it? 72.5?
718, wasn't 718?
72120.
72120.
No. The budget that was on the ballot? No.
Ballot,
71.8.
71,
That's what I thought. Yeah, it was either
yeah, 71.8.
718.
Right.
So how are you at 72.1? What we got
The
here?
capital reserve addition.
Okay.
Yes, Kim?
What were the actuals last year on the food service fund and the federal projects?
Food service was about 1.35, and federal projects was 1.287. I do believe that is going to come down, which I think we had discussed. I do think that will come down as well. So-
And what do you think that will come down to? I'm wondering why we're transferring if we think that number's coming down.
Well, we had only budgeted, I think, 167, and that number would be down in terms of where we were last year, or almost 1.3, 1.28. So if we're a little bit lower than that, I think 1.25 should suit the bill. If we're
When do we know what those federal funds are?
Yeah, how soon is it just dribble in?
I think we have some funds that may be reduced, but we have a number of grants that are coming in as
That we're
well
sure
to
of, yeah.
supplement, and I've had an unprecedented number of smaller grants come
So,
in,
Kim's question is, so when do we,
reallocation and that
when
sort of
is
thing,
it
so.
for sure?
Yes, Christie, when do you have certainty and certitude as to what we have available? We have,
Is it January?
the problem is we have funds from other years.
Yeah.
We have funds from other years. Our grants used to be more.
Some of our grants, are 2-year grants, that
Right.
what you mean?
Yeah.
Years. Yeah, and others, like 17, 18 we're utilizing 17, 18 into 18, 19 school year. Others that we're just starting now, 18, 19.
Yeah, it's been an odd phenomenon with the Department of Education in terms of them stretching the grants
That's not a
out.
definitive answer for Kim.
There's overlap.
When? There's a
There's-
lot of
there's-
overlap.
Definitely overlap.
We're not in a one-year grant.
Yeah.
We're in typically a 27 months.
For some, like Title II is like that,
Yep.
Title I is just a single year.
I still get approvals from 16, 17
Right.
occasionally.
Yeah.
So,
Jen, and then back to Kim.
I'm just wondering, I don't recall it coming back up again, but thought maybe it was a good time to ask. Did we find out from the state about the kindergarten money?
Yes.
Did we talk about that already?
We didn't talk about it. I'm glad you asked. Actually, I'm glad you
The
asked.
look on your face, I was like, "What?"
Well, it was a big thing.
It was a big thing.
Yeah, no. We got any Keno money?
When,
Not yet, let's
Well-
go play Keno.
what was the metric? What was it that we were going to use as a metric as to whether we would actually get funding when we get money in the bank?
Oh.
We got money in the bank. I think we've received about 23,000 so far. So we do have our allocation, don't have the exact numbers. I'm thinking it was in the neighborhood of about 100,000 or so. But even getting a letter saying, you've been awarded, no.
No, the money
Money
there,
in the
the
bank.
account.
so would we call that unexpected revenue?
Yeah, unanticipated.
To a degree, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we weren't sure when we were.
No, I mean, if you had the letter at the time we were doing budget and we were doing the income statements, I would have supported putting money in there, but we had nothing.
Sean, there was just so much
There was no-
uncertainty at the time. Even then, I didn't quite trust it. 'cause
The
they-
next uncertainty is to go back beyond the letter and
It's-
actually
yeah,
funds in the bank.
And start funding it. Okay, now I believe it. Now I believe you.
So there's a lag between letter and funding.
Well, we got different answers to the same question during that whole budget season last year about what they would fund and when they would fund it and how they would fund it, and so. I think it ended up being favorable, so I think
And
we were
even
fortunate.
if we got the letter, I think the language at one point was like, if the Keno funds
Yeah,
come
right,
in
yeah.
at this amount.
You
then
might be eligible.
But if not, you're not gonna get
May,
that.
shall,
Yeah, beware of language that says subject to funding.
Yeah.
Kim, back to you. Are you set, Jen? Because I was going to
Yeah,
go back
yes,
to Kim.
If they try and pull the money back, the bank will notify me. So at this point, it's there and I'm happy. So.
Back to Farah, go ahead.
I'm certainly not in favor of making any vote to transfer any funds this evening. One, I
Fine.
just was presented this. Two, I would like to see a written explanation and line item transfers so that we have a better understanding. I'm no slouch with numbers, but I'm not really sure what's going on here as to why you want to transfer from one line to another. And I'm seeing basically a huge delta in the 1,100 lines of 1.368 million. I'd like to know specifically where that came from. That's a salary line. I want to know where that comes from in terms of keeping with the directive by the board to only reduce the staff by approximately 15. So if we're going to approve some sort of fund line transfer, I'd like to see the salary line detail to see which salary lines we've eliminated in this current year budget. And if we're moving equipment out of the equipment lines that was put in there essentially as a holding pattern, I'd like to know specifically which lines those are and what the rationale is for moving into those lines and tie that into what our facilities needs are for the year.
I'm agreeing with Kim. I like one page that says this to this, and this is the reason. This over here, da, 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 da. When you're talking, Kim's much better with numbers than I am, and I'm totally like, whoa, and she's writing as fast as she can. Before we vote to move anything, it needs to be very clear so this board knows exactly what we're gonna be doing.
And why?
And why. I don't think there's any reason why we can't know why.
The board has never really had this come up in recent history. It's a strange bit, so let's get it right, whatever
That's correct.
whatever format.
We haven't had this since I've been on the board where we had to do this, so let's get it right.
Let's get it right.
Give everybody a chance to get their magnifying glasses out and read this, and then come back at our next meeting with, I want to do this to this, and this is why.
Okay.
From this line to that line. Does that help, Kim? Is that
Yeah.
closer?
Yes, thank you.
Could
Because
we-
Brian?
I was gonna say,
Right.
could we get that like ahead of time, so it's not
If
like we're
it's,
getting
if
it
it's
right now?
absolutely
next meeting?
possible to get it to us
Ahead of
even
time.
the day before
Yep.
in our packet, so we could kind of have a chance to study it.
Yep.
It helps us be able to format questions.
Yep.
I know you're busy, but, Brian,
Well, first of all, I like this format there with the other thing, but I believe this is what we asked you to do a few months ago. After the voters passed that, and you filled out the state form, okay, because obviously the voters just passed a bottom line. So now you're going from the bottom up and filling in the staffing this year. That's pretty much what you're doing.
well, now he's filling in the boxes.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're doing is this reflects this month. This is versus what you thought would have been in March.
Not precisely, because when we knew what had to be done.
Right.
We didn't know where that would end up, where if it's an 1,100 position, a 1,200 position, or if it was an administrative position, where that would end up. And so as a result of that, I don't know that it was on the agenda prior to that, but I think we've done what's been asked, and certainly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. No, it wasn't on the agenda. I recall, I think Kim might have been in the office that day, when we went down a few months ago to sign a form. I said, you're eventually going to have to come back to the board to move,
Here he
funding
is.
and all that, yeah.
and that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
It just
you're-
took a while for the dust to settle and
Yeah.
us to not us. No, not us.
Yeah.
You to figure it out.
And I think the board is entitled to this, I'll call it a reallocation, right? Default budget passes, the board has the opportunity to go in and reallocate the funding that you're given. We have some constraints, but relative to capital and operating. So I think that you're able to do that. The thing that I didn't want to have happen is to have it come in drips and drabs. I need to be able to give the
Right.
budget committee what I will call, we have a voted budget, and I will call this budget, once we're through with it, perhaps an approved budget or a working budget or something to that effect. So we have that one budget. We need that one place to start from. So now we're in a good place to do that.
Sean, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to, I know we had some discussion previously with regards to the capital component, the way that that's all done and all that stuff and the money on there. There is no transfers. You're staying
Between-
in those silos and staying within them. There's transfers, the capital silos, transfers over here.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That's the idea to stay within those silos.
Okay.
Kim?
My concern, though, is that I heard you say a comment about moving new equipment, replacement equipment, monies around. That's a little concerning to me in terms of the preparation of the default budget, because those kind of need to be left as they are when you go to prepare the default budget. I don't think we want to start moving those sorts of monies around, especially given what, the new guidelines regarding preparation of the default budget.
I'm at a question with the default budget is that can be prepared off what I will call, so we'll have the voted budget, right, which was voted, and we'll have the adopted budget, which this board will take the voted budget, make some reallocations, and then it'll be the adopted budget. So is the default budget, does that start from the adopted budget?
Or the
Or the voted budget?
Where does it start?
And my impression would be that it would be from that voted budget.
Voted budget.
So what's there would then roll forward into that. So
Okay,
we're-
as long as we're doing that, I'm concerned that we are going to now have a new adopted budget and
Oh,
use that
no,
as the
yeah, no,
basis. I
it's
just
not
want to
the-
make sure.
It's a fair question. It's a great question.
Yeah, it's the voted budget. Good question, Kim, good catch.
I think it's a good discussion.
Kim, something else?
Another question I have, I see your deltas, but I see all deltas as positive. Obviously, there has to be some negative to offset these positives, and I don't see what the delta of 1.368 is offset by perhaps moving into other lines. So I guess that's also why I want
Are
to
those
see.
little teeny tiny negatives there?
Excuse me?
Thank you. Yeah.
There's little teeny tiny negatives in front of some of
They
those
must be
dollars.
really teeny tiny.
Get those magnifying.
Oh, I see, they're in
There's a
front of the
couple of-
dollar sign. Oh, they're not in front of the number. Okay. Well, I assume they'd be in front of the
Yeah,
number.
There's some little teeny ones.
Okay, so, but what's striking to me is I don't see one in front of the special ed line at all. And that was one of the big crisis points in the default budget, was it not? Am I recalling that correctly?
Yes. So, where are we?
What line is that?
That's the summation of the
First page.
1,200 lines.
Go easy.
They're all negatives.
Aren't those all negatives? I gotta get my glasses out.
Are we talking the underfunded special ed line?
There's
Is that what we're
1,200.
trying- is that what you're
Okay,
referring
so
to, Dr.
this is-
Farah? The
this
ones
is
with the
what
little
it is.
negatives next to it?
Excuse me?
Is that what you're referring to, the underfunded special ed line?
Yes, it is,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, good.
It says negative.
So
Does it say-
we're showing an
Oh.
underfunding of minus 375,000 on that line,
375,
approximately.
at least at this point.
And that, and forgive me because this is difficult to see, that is,
I'm not seeing it.
it'd be nice if we could carry the line all the way across.
Need like a straight edge.
This is
A negative.
200,000 on private tuition and 175
Yeah,
on
no,
residential
listed
costs.
at all.
So, I don't have my calculator here with me, but I know those were anticipated to go up, what, about 15 to 20% based on the contracts that I was provided with last year, or the information?
Based on the year-over-year rate, or based on the student population?
Well, it's based on the population and the rate, correct? Do we have the rate? I'm assuming we have all the rates for this
Correct.
year.
Yeah, levels of service and that sort of thing. We've had some movement, we've had some
What?
unanticipated student needs as well.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we plan to get that kind of information from Jeff for next time in bigger font, if it's possible, and that gives
Yeah, if you'd
us
like
a
the
chance.
presentation, I can do that, and give the detail, and we'll go from there. So,
I'd like the detail. I need to know why you were doing
in a
that.
bigger font, so I hear you.
Okay? Oh, more questions. Yes, Danny.
Well, this is because Jeff's done and he's about to go away, but Jeff, I did notice, in the check registers, 16,700 to the trustee of the trust funds for
Yes.
the capital.
16.
Well, 16, whatever the
970.
number was is what it was,
16.7,
right?
right.
Okay, so that didn't change.
Nope.
All right.
Put it in.
Thank you.
That's what we devoted last time.
Yes, I happened to see it in the check registers and I just,
Kim, something else. One more thing for Jeff before he...
Is it, well, there are two things that relate to budgetary. There was something that came across in the many, many hundreds of emails that we got with regards to the consultant and when that, was that paid out of last year's budget?
encumbered it out of, the consultant for Jeff's office.
Correct.
The motion was to take it out of the surplus of 17-18.
So-
And Mr. Boyle seconded the motion.
Yep.
So it was encumbered from 17-18.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not coming out of this budget. And the
Wait
next
a second,
question.
wait a second. If I can interject here. If I recall correctly, I saw that contract. It's actually 7/1 was the executed, the start of it. It was signed on 7/25, which is definitely
we-
in this fiscal year, so how can we say it?
But we were working with him and decided we would take the money from surplus in the 17-18 budget, but we met on the 21st to do that. You didn't expect him
We as a
to.
board gave the go-ahead to go ahead and do it.
That's correct, but
But
he
the
couldn't have
execution-
possibly do it by the 30th of June, because we executed it on the 21st of June. He wouldn't have possibly been able to do the contract by the 30th, right? He's done the work this summer.
Well, yeah, if we had to, there's no legal obligation that this board is created until 7/25 when it was executed. I just I don't understand
We
how we
voted,
can say that
put
even
the
though we
money
wanted it to be in there, you have to have an obligation,
We
a
did,
legally binding contract,
don't-
a PO or something to that effect, a memorandum of understanding that would
phone
create a.
conversation with him, he would come in, you had a phone conversation after the 21st, but before the 1st, that he was going to come in, and you'd had to work out a schedule with him, and he couldn't get here to the 25th because of vacations and obligations or whatever, and you had obligations as well.
The board voted the encumbrance.
Right. And we voted to put that money aside, I thought. But that's, I looked at the motion again, I looked at the minutes, looked at the Vimeo.
Oh, I know we agreed to it
Yeah.
being last year, but the implementation of it didn't happen in that time.
I
That's
think
all
what's-
I think it's gonna create an issue with the audit, because they're gonna look at it and say, where's the legal obligation? Yes, we wanted it in there as a board, but the actual implementation of it. That's why when we do things like prior to the summer, we're looking to give all the approvals so that we can get contracts in place before 7/1, because now it's the next year's money.
Did you want him, if he couldn't get here between the 21st of June and the 30th of June, to him to not do it? After we had had that huge, all that advice from our auditor?
Did we reach out to create at least a paper trail so that we could say on good faith that we created this paper trail, that we could say on, pick a date, the 25th, I reached out and contacted him and asking him for consulting services? That's what I'm looking at. If I'm playing my auditor's hat, and I'm looking at where did you create this legal obligation to Timberlane School District? And it's, as far as I can see right now, it's only just a contract I see. If you have something else in
What I can do is I can reach out to our auditor and say, hey, board had a question on this, and you take a look at it.
sounds good.
That'd be fine with me. Jen?
Yeah, I think in the past, though, I understand what Sean's saying, and in the past, if I remember watching other board meetings, there was always this big push. If we were going to encumber some money from the surplus to do projects, that there was always a push to get those projects under contract by June 30th, because if we didn't do it by June 30th, then we couldn't.
We had to encumber the money by the 30th and get whoever was to agree. Yes, I agree with you.
So, yeah,
I
so
figured
it
he'd
looks
already
so.
agreed, he'd agreed by the 30th.
I don't know that a
do
verbal
the work.
agreement is.
Well,
maybe nice if every verbal agreement held up, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we're in the process now, just trying to make up our own rules. This is not like, if our auditors have an issue with it, which I'm gonna tell you, I doubt they will. But a signed
can ask them.
contract, you know, if we're talking about building a field, which is I think the comparison we're given, Mitch, remember that whole, they approved the money, but this money was encumbered and agreed upon, and then there's the drawing up the contract and having it signed. I mean, he could have backdated it, he didn't, he signed it the day he signed it. But there was an understanding after that meeting that this particular consultant would come in and do this work. Now, whether you pay for it out of this year or last year, you know, whatever, however that works, that's fine. But I think we're all just now, you know, making up our own rules about what we think we're supposed to have or not have, right?
I don't think anybody's trying to make up rules, we just want to make sure that it's done right.
Yeah, well, he is gonna make sure it's done
So
right.
he can check with the auditor. I think that's a good thing. Check with the auditor. I mean, this is what the auditor wanted, which is Brian.
I mean, I asked him every day, right? After that meeting, I kept asking. I spoke to Greg
I
on
did
the
too.
phone. I met Greg on the phone. There was an understanding he was gonna be coming over when he could to draw up an agreement and that sort of thing, so they encumbered the money, and he's doing a great job. So if there's an issue and we have to pay for it out of this year, well, so be it. But I don't think there is. But that's my opinion.
Brian.
Does Timberlane have a, some kind of internal purchase order system?
Of course.
Okay, so the board votes, take it out of this year money. So was there some kind of internal purchase order saying that it's a pending thing? So if you have this internal process, that will serve as the necessary document, I'm sure, to encumber money. That would, you know, so that's, I'm asking that, because that is the favorite example, whether it's a selectman, you know, it's usually roads, but, you know, if you fields, these large dollar amounts, but if you're talking a small thing like that, but if you take a board vote, and then within a couple of days, there's some kind of internal paperwork, well, you can confirm that with Campo, but you'll probably find that that's what's gonna happen.
Earl, then Dan, then back to Kim.
I checked with our attorneys. Oh, we could have put that field in if we wanted to, based on the vote of the board to move the money. It was very controversial, and they weren't ready, and they weren't sure where they wanted the field. We didn't have it under contract, and I had said if I don't have something under contract by 7/1, this is about the, you know, 150 or 200,000. What is a $100,000 field, which was very different than you encumbering a small amount of money, $20,000, to hire a consultant based on the auditor's recommendations. So I think. I don't think these are fair comparisons.
No, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, no, I know you're using an
But-
example.
but
Our attorney said, go ahead and put the field in, you're fine. The board voted to cover the money. I chose not to. Because it wasn't, they weren't even sure where they wanted the field. You know, we were trying to pick a spot for the field, and it wasn't where the school wanted it. It got to be, they're not ready, and then it just wasn't the right thing. This was a necessity that our auditor came in, you recommended, this had to get done. Very different.
So before we go, you know, too far afield, let's stick to the topic of, we'll check it out. I think we're fine. I hear what you're saying. I think we're gonna be fine. We've got a positive thing to say about Mr. Colby here momentarily. Go ahead, Dan, and then back to Kim.
So we did run into the same problem, if you guys remember the gym walls. We approved a certain amount of money to do the gym walls, we were under contract, and then that guy said, nope, I'm not doing it.
I'm not doing it for that, and I'm not doing it, period. He
We had
walked
to
away.
pick somebody different, that we had no contract with.
And we did it after.
That was well past.
It was way past.
We were under the gun to get it done, and I think they were still pointing it when school started, or they were close to it. So, like you said, making up rules, whatever, but it's been done in the past, it has happened.
Yeah, but to Sean's point, that is a good practice.
Right,
to have
no,
it.
no,
You know,
no.
it's very clean that way.
Yeah.
Right, it's very clean, but I don't necessarily think that it's wrong, but we can transfer up to $25,000 DBJ and pay for it out of this year. So if it's a problem, we'll take care of it, but I don't believe it is, I really don't.
No, I think it's fine, it's what the board wanted to do, was pay for it out
We're
of
just
that.
executing the will of the board, is basically what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay, let's see if we can wrap this up. Kim?
Just real quick, the reason I asked the question too is because it would be, it is a one-time expense. And again, in preparation of the default budget, if it's coming out of this year's budget, it should be it should not be in the default budget. So that was part of the basis for my question, not the whole when the contract was signed. The other question is, I'll do two quick ones. Is the consultant done, and are we gonna get a treasurer's report? And I would like to know
I have
when
a
the books are balanced too, because, okay,
I
thank
have a
you.
treasurer's report.
Promise you,
I
it's right
believe
here.
he's still doing the work.
No, don't do it yet. Do
Okay,
it in
sorry.
your administrative report. We have its agenda. I promise, we're gonna get to that.
Where's my agenda?
Okay.
Huh?
Where is my agenda?
Anything else before we let,
Just one more.
just one more?
And this should be quick. Is the monthly financials that we're gonna get? So we basically, the big push was for the end of the year for that, printing in June. When can we expect to have like July? And I know, August just sort of closed, so I don't expect that right away, but like the monthly.
Isn't that posted?
Did we not look at them last month?
Yeah, he gave them to you at the last meeting.
Didn't he give some to us last? I didn't bring all
I
that
thought
stuff.
he did.
No,
You have
those
August
were
right
the,
here.
those were the end of years that
End of
you
year.
gave us
Years,
last time.
But not the.
Not July.
Not July,
I wouldn't expect
August.
August right now. I'm not.
Got it.
Yeah, it wasn't July, it was just the end of years last
Yeah.
time.
And isn't that
Yeah, it's
posted?
posted.
Is it posted?
Yeah.
Where is that posted? In that SharePoint
Yep.
stuff?
I live under
SharePoint?
the BudCom, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, Budget Committee, documents,
It's under documents, yeah, they had, and they're by fiscal year.
yeah. So 18, 19,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I
Get
have-
posted, when do they get posted?
This was posted 8/24, the end of July, I think. That's what this is the one I printed off from the BudCom page today.
And what one was,
Okay.
what's that, Kim, is that the July one?
Yeah, that was July 1 to 31 was posted August 24th.
Okay, so now it's posted.
And is August
July.
posted?
Is August posted yet?
No, we'll be after, I present it to you guys first.
Okay. What's
Middle of the month.
reasonable for you? I mean, can we expect that, usually by our second school board meeting that those would have already been posted?
Is it posted by the middle of the next month, the end of the next month? How far behind are the postings?
For a regular monthly reporting,
Yeah.
about 10 days.
Okay, so it's reasonable to expect that, we would have it, all right, within 10 days roughly, and then the second school board meeting.
I would
should
think
be
the
able to-
Should be
second,
posted by the third Thursday. We typically, right?
by the
That would be the
third-
second meeting of the month,
Second meeting.
third Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay,
right?
all right.
But you would typically have it
24th.
first before it's posted.
And this month I pushed a little bit because it was nice to have the range to date, year to date so far, last year's spend, budget, proposed budget.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Kim?
And just to clarify that the next meeting, that when we look at the transfers, that I would like to see a salary line detail on the 1100.112 line to see where we've taken $1.368 million out of that line.
I've got a note.
Thank you,
Made a note.
thank you.
It's not zeroed out, as you know, I call it breakage or salary savings. So when somebody left and we hired somebody, there's some savings there too, in addition to
Correct,
lines that are
correct.
zeroed out. So I think it's a collection I know it's a collection of both, as you know.
I would just kind of want to see what lines are vacant. And at some point too, I'd like to see, I'd like to know what the impact of that is this year specifically.
In terms of our ability to deliver the services?
Correct.
Yeah, we can go into great detail at some point in the future, and, I think right now, special ed is an area where we're still figuring out, that's where I think we're feeling a little bit of the pinch of this default budget, but I think, I do believe, and Christie and Sandy and folks, we can put something together in the near future to see what the impact is, but I think we're in pretty good shape. Special ed is what I was concerned, and I shared that with you, several times. Yeah.
Okay, we set? Jeff's gonna try to get up again. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, moving on, school board goals. In your packet, you have the draft. We worked 4 hours in 2 different sessions on these goals. And I got to a point where I thought as I typed these up that we had them in a format that I thought we could bring now and have a more public discussion, because we all were not at those work sessions. I've numbered them, I had Kathy number them so that we could speak under the 3 big categories, and you'll notice it's very similar to the strategic plan. It's the academic section, a planning section, a culture and community section, and a financial section. of these goals. So I apologize that I didn't get them out to you ahead of time as soon as I wanted to, but they are here tonight. If you would like to take them and study them, we could do that. If you want to go ahead, my plan is that we discuss each one and vote on each one separately until we get to a final draft.
You should do that next meeting.
And that, I know there may be some you want to, I'll say amend with some of the language. Some of it, I can tell you, I've checked on a couple of the languages, particularly about negotiations. We're not going to put in as a goal specific parts of contract language that would be currently being negotiated with a TTA. So we don't want to have an unfair labor practice situation. So what is your pleasure? Discuss some tonight, take them home and discuss them next time with a,
Put them home and put it on the agenda. for
with a goal of,
one at a time.
how would that be?
I would
Dan's?
agree that by pushing it off, that, you know, so we can look at it and
Yeah.
we'll figure out which ones.
Make your notes and
But-
questions.
I know that one right here that I think is, I was gonna probably bring it up in, when we got to the committees and stuff, is about the, you know, one of the big items that's on this year is the TTA contract. So I would like to know, like, one, where we stand right now, that we've been any meetings, and two is, where are we gonna have like a meeting so that every, you know, there's 3 representatives that are there that are taking input. I thought there's 3, Dan, Sarah, and Kelly.
Oh, Kelly
Yeah,
wasn't here today.
Kelly
Oh,
was
we
just
met today,
with-
that's, I'm
yeah.
sorry. We only had
Yeah.
So-
So we can't talk about that in public, it has to be a
I totally understand
non-meeting,
that,
we
but-
have to
but
protect
There are
everybody.
representatives, and we haven't discussed this as a board where the other 6 people
Right.
want to
Right.
comment.
Absolutely. And traditionally, Sean, I'll just tell you, since I've been on the board in negotiations, whether it's been the TTA or the para union, is that we would have, at some point, the reps to the negotiating or personnel committee ask for a non-meeting. We have a non-meeting, they give us, this is what we've done so far, we've had this number of meetings, blah, blah, blah. Here was where we're at. They might ask, they'll ask for you input, we might be at a give us some kind of a number at that point, they'll ask for our feedback, then they go back to the team and continue. So, absolutely that will happen, you will be informed, we will be informed. So, it won't, I don't think they're ready to do anything tonight, Kim?
Having not been involved in these before, can you backward timeline this? When is this contract negotiation done? Because I'm trying to figure out when we need us, as the rest of the board would be coming into the loop. Can you explain how this process goes and when it's
I'm gonna
done?
let, or, I mean, I can do, but I'll let Earl do it.
Yeah, the process is unique in each time. I think this year, I don't know if we got started any earlier, but we got started early because we had a planning meeting. So right now, we have scheduled Thursdays all through the fall. The hope is to have an agreement in place, a tentative agreement in place by, like Veterans Day-ish. Sometimes we had shot for like Thanksgiving. Now, the board gets brought into the loop with non-meetings and updates along the way. We've only met twice, so we met a planning session, and today was the first exchange of proposals, et cetera. So, does that answer your question?
So, we have a 2-month window, and this was the first action sort of meeting. And you're meeting every other week or every week?
No, they say, they booked out every single Thursday, which was a
Everything.
lot more meetings. You know, I've done this a lot of times, or enough times now, that we've booked out more time than we've ever had in the past. Is that correct? You know, and,
Yeah, that way it gets done earlier rather than later.
yeah. The hope is to get it done earlier than later. Sometimes it gets into late December,
It's
and
got
then
till
it gets
third.
tricky. And that's not even an impasse situation. It just, that has happened where we were meeting late into December, and that's not ideal. Ideal would be to, I think we agreed to have something, hopefully have something in place by Veterans Day, I think was the target, that beginning of November, which will give you some time. And it helps with the budget process as well.
Because it has to be a warrant article.
Right, yeah.
So we need to have time to write that and get the numbers correct in the warrant article, and get that all correct. So I will tell you, they scheduled a lot more meetings than any other time, and I'm really pleased about that. Maybe they won't need them all. That would be great if they could say we're done by October, but.
If we get late in the process, now late in the process because we have a target date of that Veterans Day, then we typically schedule an all-day. So they're here at 8 to 4 or whatever, and you go, that's like when you're just grinding out the details to get it done. We don't know if we'll need to do that, but we've done that in the past where we've had an all-day session. But that was when it got late, really late, right?
Right now, those are the October meetings.
Yeah.
So does that help, Sean, with that question about the union stuff, the contract stuff?
But it seems like we should be brought in pretty quickly, because if you're negotiating, we don't want to wait a month and then, because our reps should be representing what this board wants to do, but right now I don't think
There's nothing in place yet to talk about, I don't believe, so to be careful what we say.
Oh, we're not saying anything, we're
Publicly.
talking in very general
Yeah.
context.
They started today.
You could ask for a non-meeting soon,
Yes, that's,
maybe before the next meeting or the meeting in early
Would
October.
think-
Those meetings are pretty close, the September 20th and the October 4th. If we have, there should be something to share by then, because we'll have met 3 or 4 times prior to.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? So what's your pleasure about this goal page? Take it home, look it over, bring it back for next meeting or next meeting? With our hope of banging these out, amending any you want, voting and moving along. Jen?
My only concern, if these are supposed to drive the superintendent's goals, then how much time does that give him to create his goals and then?
Nice.
We're-
Nice.
I
We're
think
up
he's read
against-
these.
Yeah,
A direction or a general direction?
And that statement's been made by me and by other board members in the past, and that's really like a governance team thing. It's not entirely necessary for your goals to drive my goals or your goals, but they should, as should the strategic plan. So I've been kind of waiting, although I have some things, kind of drafted, and I have to draft, obviously, with Dr. Wilson, Hampstead goals, and kind of get them all to the SAU board in early October. Obviously, a lot of the work is already underway. That's why I said some of the strategic plan, some of it's new work, some of it's old work. Some of the work would take place with or without the strategic plan. Some of this work would take place with or without. And obviously, because we're already into October, we started in July, right? Some of the professional development, those sorts of things. But this kind of, there aren't any surprises here. I'm going to try to, I'm going to try to draw my goals off of your goals. So it's school board to superintendent to district to, obviously, to the school action plans, because the school action plans, they're also asking, and they're going to be presenting in October as well. Elementary at one of your meetings, and secondary and programs at the other meeting. So there should also be driven. But a lot of it's climate and culture, academic achievement, some of it's facility driven. So I think it ties in, looking at these drafts, they're tying in. But to formalize it all, it would be premature for us to formalize our goals until you formalize your goals.
I think we'll be all
So
right.
Jen's right, it is slowing down a little bit, but it's not stopping the work. It's just,
Yes, Kim?
one thing I would like to see added to this, and this ties back to the CIP committee last night, is I would like to see us set a date for facilities master plan onto our goals. That we
That
will
would
have
hook
it.
into the strategic plan. Because that's part of the strategic plan.
It is,
master.
and it's a really important part of planning, and we can't really seem to
Would you do me the honor of putting that in writing and either emailing it to me, so then I could just add it, or I'll have Kathy add it as something that we could discuss? Would you
Yeah,
mind doing that?
I don't mind doing that. I'm trying to think of a date, but I think I know I work better if I have a due date.
Yep.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be a little more realistic.
By
but
Monday.
I don't know, December, January?
December?
Okay.
Okay, so write something up and we'll put it in. And as you look at these, if you've got some things, shoot me an email. I'll send them along so Kathy can get them into the draft edition. So we'll have them for the 20th to have a public discussion of. These aren't on any website because they are our work product. And once we're done with them, then we'll obviously publicize them like we always have. Right? This is work product. And I do appreciate the people that have come, they came 4 hours during the summer to do this in that very hot library at the high school, so I appreciate the work you guys did this summer on these.
And one last thing, and in respect to my goals, I typically would send out an email at some point, you know, if there are things that you would like me to consider, to put into my goals that aren't necessarily reflected in this document, the one you're looking at, please email me, and we'll see how that works through SLT, and, you know, we'll try to do that. I mean, in the past, some people have sent, some people have not, some people rely just on the school board goals. Whatever works for you, you know, because there is a chance there might be something that you'd like to see in my goals that aren't in here. So I'm certainly, you know, I'm all ears, I'm willing to take a look at it.
All right, so Kathy, you'll make sure on your list of things that we're gonna add this, are we in consensus? We don't need a motion, do we? Nope. Okay. Policies,
Would you like to take this?
No. Or Jen can do it,
You have the chairs.
and you do it.
Okay. You have a second read adoption. If you want to take a look at it, you have 4 policies in front of you this evening. The first was EI risk management. I'm reading from the sheet, it's probably more for the audience. Policy was remanded back to the policy committee by the school board as it was not put before the PC first. Policy committee changes are reflective of the risk pool management program and the district partnerships in. Policy committee recommends the changes, and our CFO, Attorney Dowd, is here tonight if you have any questions about the risk management policy. That's one. Do you want me to go one at a time, or do you want to just look at them all? It's your second read, you've had a chance.
Yeah, we've seen, this is second time now.
I'm not sure what's your pleasure, how you?
Just keep going.
Okay, keep going, okay.
Keep going.
The second policy you have in front of you this evening for a second read is GBCD, that's Background Investigation and Criminal Records Check. That's a newly revised policy to conform to the changes in the law. Policy committee recommends the changes and added mandatory checks for volunteers under the volunteer section. Number 3, the third policy in front of you is ABA, that's volunteer involvement. While reviewing GBCD, the policy committee also reviewed associated policy ABA and recommends reaffirming that policy. And the final one is IJOC, it's volunteers. While reviewing GBCD, the policy committee also reviewed associated policy IJOC and recommends adding a reference to chaperones. Now, while you're adopting these, some of you and some of the members of the public had reached out in terms of concerns about our chaperones and volunteers. Once adopted, we need to have an implementation period. You know, so I was thinking more like January to get through the fall. You have a lot of volunteers. That would give us an opportunity to get people in and screened so we could meet these policies. So the execution date was really a concern for people that have looked at this, board members and members of the public. So we don't want the policy to prohibit or to limit or to create any obstacles for the great volunteers that we have in all our schools and all our programs, our band and football games and all that. So if you would, give us that little bit of wiggle room to worry about the winter, that would be helpful.
Danny?
So do you want us to, would you like us to adopt them on January 1?
Well, that would be the implementation.
Okay, so adopt and implement on January, or adopt them.
I would just want the board as an understanding that our
I'm fine with
implementation,
it,
we need
but
an
if you want
implementation
it
period so
in
that
a
we didn't
motion.
have a negative impact to
Yeah.
the district in terms of our volunteer program.
I completely
Will,
understand.
will you start the process, though?
We'll start the process. We might get them all through, but I mean, we might not. you
So,
know, so.
all right, well, let me rephrase that. So your goal is to start the background process after this board adopts it, with a goal of having it in full execution by January 1st.
Correct, yeah, correct. We have the machine up and running, we have our, right, so we have a system in place now that's gonna help expedite, and we're gonna be inviting people to come. It's just, I don't know how big of a job this is, and I know that people that reached out were concerned. You know, we're really concerned.
I think
TMA and some
year
other folks, so.
one will be the big one, because everybody will be, but then after year one,
Should
should just
filter through.
roll out
Yeah.
smoothly.
Yeah, we should be able to have a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
base of volunteers that have all been through the screening program, so that would be good.
Okay, that's all of them? Danny?
Motion to accept second read for adoption and reaffirmment, EI, GBCD, ABA, and IJOC.
A second.
Oh, I'm gonna let Jen a second. Any other discussion or questions? You did have a chance to look at these. If not, I'm gonna call for a vote and end discussion. All in favor? Unanimous,
Thank you, and
Kathy?
thank you for
Thank
that
you.
latitude to get the program up and running. That's very much appreciated.
I'm sure I do have a question in regards to policies though.
Yep.
Is where do we stand relative to the inquiry with New Hampshire School Board Association to review our policies?
I'm happy to speak to it.
I asked Kathy to reach out to their
Okay.
attorney.
I did. So I reached out to the attorney on 3 occasions, and what he had indicated through a voice message actually was that the process would be, it's the $1,500, the process would be is that they would be looking at the entire policy book that Timberlane has to verify that all of the required policies are in place. They would then make recommendation for policies that they thought might be inconsistent with law or those that need to be updated. Those would be, again, those would just be recommendations about those changes, meaning that the work would still be done. The impression I got was that the work would still be done by this office. They would just be making recommendations upon review of the policies.
Well, we would, at that point, we would have a list of, these ones have a lot of additions or subtractions that they would like to add to it. So it could put a weight factor for the board and the committees to decide which ones to focus in on. I mean, they might tell us that we don't have a policy, for example.
Well, there's two points here. First, Jen and Lee did a really good job, doing that kind of research and getting a lot of information to us in terms of the queue. I don't believe that the New Hampshire School Board Association would
Do any better.
do any better. And number two is this is kind of a duplication of the work the more we talked about this, because I go annually to Drummond Woodson holds a conference on policies, and they give us a list of all the policies, and they go through all the ones you need. Not necessarily looking at ours to say which ones you don't have, but these are all the updates you need to do. Now, that was, I know I keep saying the same, but that was the delay last year. I provided that list, and that list was kind of pushed aside for a whole different list. So we are backed up a little bit. That's not the only reason. We have a lot that are overdue, but that is a big reason. There's a good 15 to 20 policies that we need to get to. Now, Brian jumped in about halfway through, and we got through some of them, but we didn't get through all of them. So we're in that process now. So, I mean, we use our attorneys for policy language. They're experts. I mean, it's almost like a duplication of efforts to pay twice,
We have quite a nice list here, too, provided May 2018, of all by New Hampshire school boards, of all the absolute ones you must have by law, mandated by state or federal law. So we have all of those, and Jen's gone through quite a bit of this. We discussed actually at the policy meeting that we've got one here that we don't have it in our book as those letters, so we need to cross-reference. Do we have it under a different heading? That's what happens. You end up titling it something different. So we got to do some cross-referencing, and I don't believe the New Hampshire School Board would do that for us. We still have to do the work.
Well, they would flag it then as a missing policy then.
Right, which Jen's already done.
Jen's already done the work.
Jen's done this work.
We have them flagged, now we have to
And
find.
I've cross-referenced a lot
Yeah.
of them, and I
Right.
do have those.
She's got some that she's found. So I think really between Jen and Lee, they had done a lot of that work that we would just be paying New Hampshire school boards to do all over again. And still, we have to do our own policy work in our own meetings. They're not going to tell us what to do. We're not going to say,
And it would be a third version of the same thing, because I have a list from the Drummond Woodson that these are the ones that we
All right,
needed to
so- and our
update because of
lawyer
law
does.
changes. That all the districts get, probably their districts that they work for, right, as part of that law conference, but.
Kim,
I was talking to Jen, and I guess we have a lot of policies that really we don't need to have, which,
well, that's a whole different conversation.
well, but that's something that this group could also look at, is to get rid of some of these policies that we have that are already mandated by RSA.
I don't think New Hampshire School Boards Association is going to go through our book and say, you really don't need to do this one.
They told
won't.
us-
They
yeah.
told us they would
They-
not do that.
They told us they would only tell us the ones that we need. They would not do anything with policies that we have that we don't need. They're not gonna say, don't have a policy. That was the
You would rely
discussion.
on your own legal counsel as to whether or not you needed that policy.
And we have some that are, I don't know, they're kind of Timberlane specific for whatever reason. I mean, we have a lot of policies. Obviously, there's two big binders, so.
One example, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jen.
One example, like, I feel like the more policies we have, the more behind we get in keeping them current. And one that jumped out at me was a whole section in B about school board members and their
Removal from office, things like that. That's
yeah,
all
their
dictated by RSA.
qualifications, removal from office, all of those are, that language is, it's in RSA already. So having a policy, it's like, we don't really need the policy because the policy is never gonna supersede RSAs.
You're right.
So
I think
it's,
we
it's,
should,
we just, all of those are just more things that end up getting backed up in the queue that,
And now's the
So
I
time.
don't
we
wanna
should-
say the policy doesn't really matter, but
we should read them and repeal them, if that's the you know, the will of the
Exactly,
board.
that's what it should be done.
Yeah,
But
that's the
not
way,
the New
yeah.
Hampshire School Board's doing it for us. We need to do it. It's our work, not the school,
Because,
not New
yeah,
Hampshire School Board.
$1,500, it seems like it's a very cheap cost, overall, to get a third independent review of issues that we could potentially look at. They could say, you don't need this policy.
They're not,
I don't think
Sean,
they're gonna say that.
Sean, we already asked them, they're specific, all they're going to do is tell you this policies that you need. Well, Kathy had the conversation, so.
Right, and the other part too is that the policies are coded by recommended policy, a priority policy, which is a required policy, and optional. So one of the other things that, that we can do is to go through them and really just flag the ones that are optional. And let that be your starting point as to, do we really need this? And then you can go to the recommended ones. And once you've gone through all your optional ones, you can look at your recommended ones. Do we need them, these ones? But the priority ones are required by law.
Yeah, those are the ones
So that
we
would be,
should
I mean,
focus on.
there's still a way to go through that process.
Yeah, our problem, you may not be comfortable with where we are, but we're in a much better place than we were. All of our policies had all procedures in them. We've been cleaning out the procedures out of the policies. And Jen makes a good point. There are some where there's RSAs where you don't need a policy to reinforce. It's not gonna supersede an RSA. And in some instances, I know I said this a million times, but the policies, practices, and procedures, they conflicted with one another. We're in a much better place with that than we ever were, meaning our handbook is supported by the policy and the procedure supports the policy. So, but I think reading them and repealing them is probably the way we need to go as far as the policy committee, if that's the will of the board.
but when do we get to that point?
And I said I wouldn't be willing to go through those that we've got that we don't need until we've done the ones we do need by
Unless you
law.
run into one that you don't need
Yeah.
while you're doing it,
Yeah.
then just do it then.
The reason
That's
I
the
was looking at
priority.
this is because just the simple math, it just shows that we're never gonna get there. I mean, to do a 5-year review, we got, just make the math easy, 300 policies, so that's 60 a year that we have to approve, which we have, 20 meetings a year? That's 3 every meeting that have to be approved for even to reach that goal, for 5 years, every meeting.
Well,
And it just seems,
Well,
not realistic.
it may not be realistic, it is doable, provided that we don't run into a whole wasted meeting and getting nothing done in the room, right? On one policy, right? And we haven't met a lot, but we moved a few along. We got 4 tonight. We have some that we had first reads, you'll get next meeting.
I honestly would like to see, and I'm happy to pull some out for every meeting, but if there's some that are just going to be, we're going to look at to repeal, I feel like that's a pretty quick.
Do you think you and I could sit and look at the policy book and pull out the ones that we could simply repeal?
And then you could just bring all those to the
Without
school.
putting it through policy committee?
I
But
think I
you
had
don't
asked
wanna
that
have-
before, but I thought I was told that it had to go through policy
But
committee.
Do you
Should-
don't
it
think
should
you
go through
want
policy
to,
committee.
yeah, don't you think you, all right, so you make a stack of them and say, look, these are the things we think need to be repealed.
Well, that's what I'm saying, when policy committee meets, I
Yeah, you
think if we
can't do it
can
on our own, we gotta
if we
have
can
policy experts.
have a few of those mixed in with
Sure.
some of the
Let's add it
work.
to the,
Yeah,
let's
'cause
add
those
it
are
to the
easy.
agenda.
We don't
Exactly.
need somebody to read the hundreds of policies. If you have ones that we can run them by our people pretty quickly. Are these policies necessary? Are they covered by RSA?
Well, we already have all them highlighted, which are optional.
Oh, I know they're optional, but then it's 2 different things, though. You could have an optional one that's not necessarily covered by an RSA.
Right,
That you still need.
Right.
That you might want because it's something important to
Something
this
that's-
particular,
right, points to Timberland specifically.
this district.
Well, I think the question, before we get way farther off base, is Sean's asking about that $1,500 and having New Hampshire school boards. And how fast do you think they're gonna turn that around for us, Sean? By June? I
No,
don't
but
know.
if it's a review of it, so that, even if this was a multi-year event for them, which hopefully it's not, but as they start popping off of their stack of ones that they've already looked at, that gets shoved over to here, and maybe we could get 60 of them.
I mean, I don't know what their process would be. do it all at once, do it piecemeal, and send some over. I think it's just redundant work, but I think we need to keep slogging along, too. Go ahead, Kim.
I know we have the New Hampshire School Board Association attorneys coming down the 26th.
Right.
I'd like to have a conversation with them and show them a few of our policies and just kind of
add that.
have a little before we make a decision on this. Personally, I'm for spending $1,500. We've certainly spent money on other things that probably have not gained us as much, and these are the experts. These are the ones that are pulling out our, model policies. So I'm in favor of spending the money, but they're coming down in a couple of
Let's
weeks.
ask
Let's
them.
wait to make
Sure,
that
let's-
decision.
They're gonna be here on the 26th, right? That's what I think.
Yeah.
Let's ask them. They've got some other things they wanna talk about. I want them to have a chance to talk about default with us a little bit and help us there a little bit to understand that. So are we agreed that would work?
That's fine.
Okay, I'll wait.
I can say, don't be too hard on the Timberlane folks from many, many years that put these policies together. I can tell you, going through grievances and some legal matters and those sorts of things, lots of our policies have been very helpful in terms of they were citing about actions that this board or the administration needs to take in regard. So it's been a lot of work, and it's whoever's in the room, you start reading through them. So I think we got to be careful. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. We don't want to just get rid of policies for the sure sake of getting rid of them. So I don't know what Drummond Woodson would ask us to do the exact same thing. I don't know if it's less money. I don't know if it's something they would just do for us. I don't know. Is that something we should explore?
My opinion would be no, because
Rather have the school board association
they're the
do
ones
it.
that write the model policies. So to me, they're the ones that should. I understand that our attorneys will probably put nuances maybe into certain policies, because it happens where I work too. But I think for the basis that the people that are writing the policies that we base our policies off should be the ones that we go to.
No, I understand your point. For me, it's, I like to have the people that are defending us, making sure that our policies are solid, because they're the ones that are actually going to defend us in the event that any of our policies are challenged. I mean, they've pointed out weaknesses to us in the past. Through that same process I just said, it was helpful. They'd say, well, this policy's a little weak here. You need, so. In any event, one way or another, we can
All right,
figure it out.
let's talk about that when they're here on the 26th. All right, moving on to, speaking of New Hampshire School Boards Association, there are resolutions, page here is in your packet. So they have their delegate assembly, and what's the date of the delegate assembly? January. And they're now accepting resolutions from school boards on topics that they would debate by the delegates when they have this meeting. In the past, I guess we have to do something by the 2nd if we want to send something up. In the past, haven't sent any up. We've sent one up. We've got some time. You might want to look at some of the delegate resolutions that have been put forth by school districts in the past. Some of them are kind of interesting reads. It depends on the conservative nature of the school district. Some of them are quite interesting things.
Left field.
Okay, and some of them are right field, so
Yeah.
being a right fielder,
Well,
some of them are first base, yes. So, look this over. I really suggest if you've got a thought of something, you certainly can bring it to our next meeting, and we could chat about whether we would want to put our name attached to that resolution, and our rationale has to be there, and it would get sent up to the assembly, if we choose to do that. Like I said, some years we have, some years we haven't. Okay? But we have, I'm glad we got this early, because in the past, we've got it like 2 minutes before we had to come up with a resolution if we wanted to get into the assembly, so we've got a little more lead time. So put that on your list of things to do, and we'll bring that back around, Kathy, to ask for any of those closer to the deadline date, okay? Administrators report.
Excellent, thank you. We received a donation. On behalf of the district, I accepted a $500 donation from the Atkinson Women's Civic Club for use of peer-to-peer substance abuse prevention program. The money will be used to purchase group supplies for meetings and trainings. I'd like to thank the Women's Civic Club from Atkinson. They are always very generous, and that was a great donation. In your packets, you also have an updated PAC schedule that Mr. Guide referred to earlier. I just looked at the dates. That's been updated and color-coded, so check it out, Sean, see if that is what you were thinking. I think that's what you were thinking, so that's this thing, this thing here.
I thought you said tax schedule.
Oh. You're always thinking taxes, right?
Oh, it's pretty. It looks good.
Also in your packet, you have a treasury report, so that's a report from the treasurer, and that's included in your packet. You also have a report from the business consultant. That's a staff report from the business consultant. That's in your packet, so you should have those two things. If you have questions about those, our CFO is still here. I know, it's, whether we have a chance to look at it now and maybe ask questions at the next meeting, or if it's ask questions now, what's your pleasure? No, Sue, Kim?
So I met with the treasurer, and this is the product that she had put together. She has reconciled everything. This is through the end of June 30th, 2018. She was in a good place. She said I'm going to quote her. I told her I was going to quote her on this. Lots of good progressive new ideas coming through the business office for how to streamline and make it a little bit more, the whole thing a little bit more efficient. Well, that was good news. Both the assistant and the treasurer are in sync. They know what they're doing together, and I thought this was a lovely report. So she's completed that, and she is up to date with reconciliations, etc. That's what I talked about with her yesterday, 2 days ago. I forget which day. She wanted you to have this. If this is something that you'd like to see from now till January or whatever, she'd put together something else for you. But it was a good conversation. Huh?
Where is she in her stipend? Did she have to do a bunch of extra work to do that? How
I
is?
was just gonna ask.
We didn't, she had a smile on her face, so I didn't think she was.
She didn't throw them at you and leave?
No, she didn't say, no, she seemed copacetic, everything seemed good. I didn't look at the stipend, she didn't mention it. But I know she's been here and she's worked pretty cooperatively with Jeff and likes the staff. They've been a nice rhythm together. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kim?
I see that we have some interest here that we're garnering off probably our running balance. Do we have a?
Jeff, do you want to come back to the table, because I can't answer that question?
I haven't even asked the question.
Well, I know I won't be able to answer it.
Come on. Do we have a sweep account where there's a certain amount, like, isn't that what we do in the town so that we're garnering more? Do we have a sweep account here?
Sweep account.
And if we don't, why don't we?
Well, we don't have a sweep account, but it would probably be helpful to explain a little bit about what that is. Is that an account that Danville has that sweeps overnight balances?
Yeah, I mean, like, you got a general fund that's got, a lot of dollars in it.
Yep.
And then you write checks out of that.
Yep.
There's whatever's balance is left, on a daily basis that gets put in minus some reserve, and it gets, a reasonable interest rate. I mean, it's not.
That was my next question. How are you doing in Danville?
I'd have to go look at it. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I mean, back when everybody personally was getting 0.1% on their own personal ones, we were in 0.35 to 0.4 range, and so I'm assuming now that it's higher than that due to all the interest rates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I know we've been doing really good. I was just talking to our trustees of the trust fund who does the district, and they're getting 1.5% on 1-year CDs.
On the CDs, yeah. I think we're getting 3/4 to 0.9 without a sweep. So I can certainly talk to our rep and see if that would enhance things.
We actually what really was able to get us into a better position was that we were looking to, let's do an RFP and see what banks, we got Peoples and TD Bank. I know there's all kinds of statutory requirements that you have to have, for, FDIC equivalent insurance and stuff. It's not that, but it's not to get off on a tangent on that. But it was just basically going out, and then you basically have them sharpen their pencils, and we were able to do better.
Come back, yeah. So we've actually reduced to some degree our banking products as well. So we're able to consolidate and appreciate some cost savings there, which helps our interest posting. And I will inquire on the sweep. One of the things that we have that might be a little bit different because our balances are on the higher side is we that money has to be protected. So where it goes when it's swept is the question. And if it goes into overnight lending, or, it wouldn't be able to leave the bank. We have a letter of credit from an asset-based, asset-laden bank to cover us for our balances over FDIC limits.
Yes, that's what we have too, is at the town.
So we always have to make sure that protection's in place wherever the funds end up.
Yeah.
So that's typically through TD, and they would cover it when it's with.
So are we all. It's all within the TD umbrella.
Yeah.
But it's a different product inside TD and it meets all the federal requirements of the insurance. But it's of the laws. It's just that if you don't ask them or put pressure on them that you might be potentially leaving, they're never going to sharpen their pencil.
Yeah.
And their interest and our interest are not aligned.
Typically, no. I do sense that our bank rep has been very responsive to our needs. So our rates have gone up, which I've been very impressed with. So I won't say too much in terms of strategy in getting that. But if we can get money that'll cover a couple kids' tuition, it's great.
No, it is. It's good.
Cost of a couple students, I'm happy.
If you look at this report from the treasurer and you have specific questions, do the same thing. Email them, I'll get them to her, and include Jeff, because it's, she's reconciling the books, not doing the practices of how we do things here, so.
Pick me up again.
I have a couple of questions in regards to the consultants.
So the consultant report is, and Jeff, we may want you back, this is the work that he has completed, as he says, to date. So I would call these are kind of like bullet points. Did, the first one on there, the second one on there, that kind of thing. So if you got a specific question on this, again, you can ask Jeff and he can take it back to the consultant, or
I
hold him.
think he can probably answer the questions. I mean, am I allowed to
Absolutely, go
ask
for
a
it.
question read a sentence off of here? This is a public document? I
Is
take
this,
it?
how are we handling this? Is this his work?
Yeah.
This is his work
It is?
product.
No, it's not confidential.
No, it's not confidential.
Okay, so it says post and analyze grants funds. That was work that he did. How are we going to ensure that, moving forward, that we're not paying $125 an hour to a consultant to do something like this?
I think as I best understand, the deliverable that was requested from the board was to get into the work, see what the workflow is, see how the staffing is, see what the capabilities are, and make a recommendation as to how to handle that workflow. And I think the 125 billable goes to some aspect, some element of that consulting as well. So it's not just doing the work; it's observing, making observations, coming to some solid recommendations.
But that would not be a recommendation to this board. Because the management is an SAU function, correct?
So, yeah, and it doesn't look like from these sentences or phrases that he's at that point yet.
Okay.
His work's not done. He's not
Well,
saying he's done.
that was my next
So,
question.
yeah, I would think that he would, in the final time, he would say, here's what I'm suggesting going forward to the business office.
Okay, and how much have we spent, and when are we gonna be done, and what are we looking at total cost?
So it's 3 or 4 questions. How much have we
Sorry.
spent? How much have we spent?
I would have to check and
How
see
long?
where we're at
Okay.
on the first. The second, how long do we anticipate his engagement to continue?
Right, and what are we looking at for a total cost?
And then a total at the end. I mean, we have a total amount that we've appropriated or encumbered. We can't go above that, so.
That's correct, yeah. I don't think we're actually gonna hit that $20,000 mark, but if our auditors are watching, then he might disallow that as an
If you don't
encumbrance.
have those answers at your fingertips, which you
So-
probably didn't bring tonight, just like we don't know
No.
how much stipend we've spent out of the treasurer's thing, can we get those answers for the next time? Or whichever way is easy, just get us those answers. Jen, Kim, I'll let Earl speak to Kim's point and then Jen.
Yeah, to Dr. Farah's point in terms of what's Timberlane specific, what's an SAU function, what's a Hampstead function. So I think as we look at this in terms of what the recommendations would be, these are issues that are Timberlane issues that are not Hampstead or SAU issues. So I don't know what the staffing recommendation is going to be. We have some potential, we have some room that we could address some plans, and we talked a little bit about, I see this particular position as more of a Timberlane position, 80%, maybe more, maybe 90%. But I don't know that yet, because we haven't had the recommendations, but it might be just a Timberlane-specific position to assist in the business office that would only deal with Timberlane work. I don't know that yet.
Because it's a bigger part of the work, right?
It's the lion's share of the work. Right, so
But
I don't.
we pay the lion's share of the budget.
No, I know, so if we needed somebody specific to make sure that Timberlane, then that's another discussion. It could be a discussion here, it could be an SAU discussion, it could be both.
And what our auditor recommended was this particular gentleman to look at the Timberlane audit issues and the Timberlane stuff, correct?
That's correct.
So that's what he's kind of looking at here, I think.
So-
So let's get those questions answered so Kim can get that.
And when he makes his recommendation, I would like to see a written recommendation from him, if possible.
Yeah,
As opposed to a verbal,
Yeah, no,
unless he
it'll
wants to
be-
come in and give his
Right,
recommendation.
he might want to do that, but I'm sure he'll put it in writing. Jen, you're next, and then Sean.
So not to try and split hairs about this too much, but if part of the hourly rate is to make recommendations, and if those recommendations are functions of the SAU, and that needs to go to the SAU board for approval, is that what I heard?
You have, it's really multifaceted, because positions that we've held open in the event of waiting for recommendations, one is a 100% Timberlane position that we've held open, that somebody that's in the SAU. The other part of the position would be a cost share, 77, 23%. So when it was doing the math, right? So you're looking at a full position and then the other position is split. So it's almost like, don't quote me on exact numbers here, it's almost like 9 out of 10 days it would be a Timberlane person. They may work at the SAU, but all their work would be Timberlane. They may assist with Hampstead maybe 10% of the time, which would be only one every 2 weeks.
My concern, though, is that Timberlane is paying that full up to $20,000 for this consultant who
Yeah,
might
he's here
make
to look at the
recommendations.
Right, he's gonna make recommendations.
I'm speaking to open positions that are already funded that we haven't filled. One is 100% Timberlane, the other is an SAU position. We've left them both open, right? So it could be 100% Timberlane, that position that used to be, it's repurposing a position that's not filled right now as we speak.
Let's wait for the recommendations.
But I didn't want to get out too far in front of that.
Yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying, though?
I am.
If
But
we're
these are-
paying for this and it's SAU approved, it doesn't make sense to me why the SAU isn't paying part of this up to $20,000.
Yeah, well, that was my thought.
Yeah, because I would think that
It was a recommendation to look at the
this
Timberlane
is
stuff.
part of the SAU umbrella, it's accounting services. I mean, that's what we're doing. We have to, as the SAU is, at least I would envision it this way, is that the SAU would be, supplying these services. They have to be properly staffed to encompass the entire operations, which are by definition both Hampstead, the SAU, and Timberlane.
But if one of the entities changes the scope of the work in that particular facet of the work, Timberlane has changed the scope of the work. The work is different in Timberlane than it is at the SAU and Hampstead. They've expanded what they want out of the business office through the auditing process. That's what's happened.
We did? What do you mean?
Well, how are we changing it? It's to,
Jeff can speak.
I mean, it's to meet, what are the requirements of an
Well,
audit?
yeah, that-
I mean, we
I don't
both
wanna
have
s-
mutual, both Hampstead, SAU, and Timberlane all have the same goal, to do the audit.
That's right. That's what makes the audit, that's what makes it really odd, because the SAU audit's fine,
And the
Hampstead
Hampstead one
audit's
was
fine,
fine.
Timberlane's was not. because the scope of the work has changed.
Letters that we got out of them were not that.
No, those two audits were not fine. You have those letters.
Let's,
Hampstead Board is entirely happy with what's going on.
They can be
Just
happy
because
with
they're
it, but the
happy doesn't
letter
mean that it's fine.
is different.
It wasn't an unusual response in terms of, the
Brian,
Timberlane
please.
was unique.
let's stick with Timberlane. Stick with
I
Timberlane.
apologize for taking us there, but we're there. We dabble into SAU and then we jump back out of it, and so it's like,
We're
I
in
mean,
Timberlane.
it's a Timberlane issue, and Timberlane
He's
decided to
looking
spend
at the
money,
Timberlane,
so that's what we're doing.
Because we can't get an SAU meeting.
You
to
can't
discuss
execute the
this.
will of the board and then complain about executing the will of the board. I don't
Well,
get
the
it.
comment was about, recommendations need to go to the SAU, and the SAU didn't pay for those,
no,
that work or the recommendation, so I was asking for clarification on that.
I would not think he would
He's not looking at the SAU work, he's not looking at the
not
Hampstead
going
work.
to SAU.
He's looking at Timberlane.
Not going to SAU.
What?
The recommendations are gonna come to us.
Come to Timberlane. Go ahead, Brian, please.
Okay, let me see if I can try this.
Okay.
This document is helpful, but I think overall, Mr. Colby was brought in to help us get current. You know, and even though that's of the 8 to 10 bullets here, that doesn't say that. It's a short-lived project, so once we are current, I'm hoping that Mr. Colby comes to this board, even though that's really a staffing thing at the superintendent's office,
With a recommendation.
with a recommendation. You need a body. You need an accounting bookkeeper body. As far as this other stuff, it's a not to exceed of 20,000. Of course, we can't do anything with SAU money, and nor should we be doing that, because even mathematically, you're only talking $3,000 or $4,000 anyway. So I'm kind of hoping that Mr. Colby, sooner than later, can go through the administration and say, this is, okay, we're caught up, and this is what we need going forward. Because there's obviously, the intent was that when you bring in someone with that kind of expertise, $125 an hour, it's for a specific function. If it's to be an assistant bookkeeper, obviously, you're not gonna pay someone $125 an hour to be an assistant bookkeeper.
I will say that I do wonder, Brian, if you're not a fly on the wall sometimes in the office, because that is precisely the plan. To get caught up.
If I'm a fly on the wall in the office,
Yeah, like,
well, then don't
over here,
swear.
we're talking about, what next steps are and all that, and
Okay.
and it mirrors what you just said. I mean, precisely. Just having that conversation, I mean, we're in sync.
And I asked for this kind of, tell us what you've done so far, so we have some kind of idea, what have you been looking at? I know your work's not done. We want a final report at the end with a recommendation, I hope. We have an audit starting October 1st. I want it ready. I want everything done so that they can start their audit on time. Okay, so we get those questions answered and keep moving on. What else?
Okay, we had one more request. Depending on how much, the details you need, it will depend on whether or not we need to go into non-public. So I'll speak vaguely or generally about something, and then if you need more details, we can go into non-public. Speaking of policies that are out of date, we have a policy, which is IKFC, and that's the graduation of a home student. So I'd like for you to waive that policy primarily because I have a home student that I'd like to be able to participate in graduation, who's returned to us, and the current policy would not allow them to return and graduate with us. And if you need more details, we'd have to go into non-public. It's someone that's returning to us as a junior. They exceed the age limit, not only by a year. They're 17.
They have the policy in their packet.
Oh, you have the policy in the packet.
Policies in your packet. Do you
I know,
wish to
but-
go into
So
non-public
the
to act?
person coming back is 17, not 16.
Correct.
Right.
And it's someone that's been with us, and there are reasons that perhaps if you need more information, I could give you more information in non-public. I'm supportive of this student returning to us and graduating with their class. But I need to waive the policy. And then we need to get this policy to the policy committee to update it, because it doesn't comply with really homeschool education
Not-
graduation
not-
now.
right.
It's a little antiquated.
It's a little
lot
old,
antiquated.
yeah, it's very old, how it's
And
done.
Susan could speak, I mean, thank you for staying. I mean, she's here if you needed some.
Do you want to go into non-public?
I have a point of order. I'm reading our policy on waiving a policy. And it states, we can only waive a policy when the following conditions are met. The proposed policy to be waived has been publicly announced to the school board at least 1 week prior to the board's vote.
1
Week
week?
prior. The waiver is for a one-time action by the administration. The vote is held at a properly noticed meeting, and a majority of the board members present agree. So, in cases of emergency meetings, this is not, or justifiable situations where inadequate prior notice was given the board, a majority vote by all board members is required to waive a policy.
Say that part again, justifiable.
Justifiable situations where inadequate prior notice was given the board. So that would be, maybe the superintendent just found this out 2 days ago versus a week ago?
That's correct. Was it 2 days? It was Wednesday. What's today? Oh, was it yesterday or Tuesday? One of.
We presented it Wednesday, the parent came back to us.
Either way, that works.
Annie,
Motion to waive policy IKFC.
second? Sarah? Questions?
So the part that we're looking to waive is to accept the student back because this policy says whichever comes first, 16 or the beginning of the junior year.
Correct, and to welcome them back so they can graduate with their class. So obviously, it's a junior, so we're not talking class of, 2019, we're talking class of 2020, but we wanted to make this person whole and get them.
So by waiting, then that prolongs
Sure.
their reentry into, okay, just to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Don't you have to waive both? Don't we have to waive what Kim just read, then waive this?
If we have a majority, we're good.
Yes, you need to waive both.
I think you
You
have to
need the
waive both.
majority to waive
That's-
our
gave
policy.
that rationale to waive both.
Correct. You've got to waive
Waive it.
that, and then you've got to waive this.
So
Yeah.
you
Out of
don't
that policy
think
code?
that justify that we just found out about it?
Yeah,
Yeah, but you have to waive that policy.
right.
You have to
So what's that
waive
policy, Kim?
What's that one? What are the letters for that without me having to get the policy book out?
BGF.
BG,
F, as in
F.
Foxtrot.
Can I withdraw my motion?
absolutely. Withdraw your second.
Motion to waive policy BGF.
Second?
Can I do
And
them
we-
together?
Yes.
Anybody-
And,
I motion to waive BGF and IKFC in that order.
and that second is, okay? Are we all right with that? I don't want to continue discussing unless we go into
Yep.
non-public. It's too identifiable, I believe.
And was Sarah, did you second that as well?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yes, so it's been, yes. All right. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
So on behalf of the family, thank you. Great kid, and that's great. Nice work, and excellent work by Mrs. Rasico, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rasico.
Finally, one last thing.
Yes?
There was several, we've had some inquisitions about, from board members as individuals, and then it was a matter of, what board members, what documents, what confidential documents can you have? And you typically get them all, you don't get them as individuals. So we consulted with our attorneys, and we've set up what's called a read-only file. That will be, I'm not even sure what's in it, but there's confidential documents, legal and other confidential documents that you're entitled to, and that will be available during normal business hours. So we have a read-only file, and that's upstairs for you.
So when I did some investigation about that, we had that in the past. I don't know why it went away, or we just didn't need that kind of file anymore. But, some months there may be nothing in it particularly, and other months there may, depending on what's going on legal. It won't include anything that involves a student or an employee, but it would be things that have to do with the board and board business. So we got that file created.
Right.
If we're all good with that, we had discussed that last meeting, that we probably would like to see if that could happen. I had Earl check with the lawyer, we're good to do that, so it's available for you. But you can't take it out of the building because they're confidential files.
Will
Brian?
I was gonna, well, the night of the meeting, could Mrs. Belcher have it by her?
The recommendation was to only make it available during normal business hours and to keep it upstairs.
I had suggested
Well,
that
that
too,
is-
that you could come in at, it's just, it needs to be within, somebody needs to escort us while we're looking at the file.
Well, well, the somebody, you've got the somebody's
On
here.
on a board night, she's preparing this
I
board room.
understand. I just
you know,
thought if it was never left that area right there, that's what,
Over there.
that's all. You know, you stop in. that's-
I get it.
Remember, we're meeting here in public and then.
We got a
we can't
table with
let
4
anybody-
cameras around.
Can't take a photograph of them, of what's in the file
Okay.
and
All right.
need to be,
Try and make it
keep
easy.
it secure. At least it's a start.
Yeah.
These things. Ken?
I do not understand why we have legal letters concerning the board and board business going out without the board even being informed, that there's even discussions with legal and without the chair knowing that there's even a discussion, much less a letter. So can we explain how that is happening?
I didn't say it was happening.
It is happening.
It's not
It is
happening.
happening.
It's
Yes,
not
it is.
happening. No, it's not.
Look in the file if you'd like to see that confidential file, which I've looked at it today, what's
So-
in there.
So we know, there are letters that are out in the public that are clearly about the board and board business that you are not aware of.
Again, you're wrong again. That's not accurate.
So you are aware of all those letters that are in that file? Because that's
In the
a,
read-only file
that,
that that Mrs. Belcher has on her desk upstairs, that I looked at today, that you're more than welcome to look at.
so you are aware of all those letters
That are in there.
that are in there that went out concerning the board and board business? Then why isn't the board being informed? What happens if we can't come in during business hours because some of us work during business hours from 8 to 4:30? What are we supposed to do then?
But they're confidential files.
They're confidential files that are actually naming members of this board.
No,
And, oh, yes, they are. Sue, I'm named in one of those letters.
You're out of order. No, you're really out of order on this. That is not what that read-only file is gonna be.
What-
That file has one thing in it right now.
If that file has one thing in it, then there are, Sue, if the board has had them.
Can we talk about that later? I don't know what you're talking about. It is not board business. It's again your business.
No, it's
So-
not my business at all.
Well,
It becomes this board's business. And that's the problem, is that we find out.
So you don't want this read-only file.
No, I want that, but I'm to the point that Dr. Farrar is addressing. I think we should know exactly what's being discussed and relative to this board.
You do know what's in that file. You already know what's in that file right now.
I could probably suspect what it is, but until I see it, I can't confirm
You
it.
were told what was gonna be in that file,
When was I told so?
June 25th,
June 25th? What is June 25th?
June 25th.
We had a board meeting June 21st.
We did.
I think,
You were here.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, right back at you. So can we move on, because this is a
Specifying
not
a
productive
date.
use of our time to argue about what is in the file and what isn't. Please come in and look at it.
No, I don't
Yes.
think we're really arguing about what's in the file, what's not in the file.
That's
We're
what you're arguing about. Can we stop? This is really
I
out
don't
of
want
order.
to argue also.
Really out of order, Brian.
I'd like to, I'm just getting back, I'm just a little confused. This board regularly looks at stuff that's confidential, goes into non-public.
That's right.
I mean, almost every other meeting. I'm still confused. It makes no sense to me that we cannot have it available the night of a scheduled meeting if
At
Mrs.
7 o'clock or 7:15.
in Mrs. Belcher's possession. They shouldn't even leave that area. If someone wants to go through, check that thing out, because, as Dr. Farrar saying, you know, I can zip around different times, but not everyone on the board can get in here during the week and this kind of stuff, so I don't think it's really fair to, well, you can see you've got,
Some of those
you've
confidential.
got a couple of board members kind of, you
Some
know.
of those confidential documents are considered student records.
Yeah, if they're not gonna have
Those
anything
are
about
not
students.
leaving that office during,
And those
they're not
should,
coming out during
and
business
we
hours.
shouldn't be seeing those.
That's correct, Brian.
Well, you're asking for them. Not you
No,
personally.
no. I'm asking,
Not you personally, but they.
okay, what I would like to see is anything that has to do with the board, nothing as
Not
students.
students, not
Anything with the
employees.
board business, that if all of a sudden, the school board chair, the superintendent of schools is sought, advice on anything, default budget, but nothing to a student business. It has to happen regularly.
Anything that would be put in writing. Mhm.
Yeah, that's all I want to see. I don't want to see anything to do with special ed or what we just voted on here about the graduate, nothing like that. So I'm, if the public, which obviously they have entrusted us to sit in these positions, and you take your oath and you do your job, and I think we're more than capable of respecting getting a folder in this room so different people can see this thing periodically. I don't see what that.
And we come up with a compromise.
Talk to the attorney.
Yeah, talk to O'Shaughnessy and see what the issue is.
But I agree.
Can I
with
talk
keeping
to
it
the
over
attorney?
there.
That's fine, keep it over
I
there.
absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
Jen?
Depending on
We-
what.
I just want to make a comment that this board has had legal letters presented to us that we've read and passed back.
That didn't have confidential information in it.
Yeah, we got the attorney's okay to share those.
Sometimes right.
But we've also had, because we've seen invoices for legal opinions concerning members of this board that we have not even seen. I don't understand that.
I have not seen any of those.
Why
I said
have-
that to you last time, I'm gonna say it again.
I understand, and I'm gonna ask the question again. Why are we not seeing that? Maybe you can ask the superintendent why we're having legal opinions that our board is paying for that don't pertain to students that our board cannot see.
I don't know what she's talking about.
Well, again, I can't speak about it publicly, because I'm happy to motion to go into a non-public if you.
I think the problem goes away. If you can talk to O'Shaughnessy and get this thing.
I won't be participating in another illegal
No,
non-public,
stop,
so.
stop. Brian, go ahead, just finish your
I
thought.
said, I think we can put this thing to bed. If you can talk to Attorney O'Shaughnessy,
Said that 5 minutes ago.
All right, let Brian finish
Well-
his
Sorry,
thought.
Brian.
again, I think it's very important. It was a great idea Lee Doobie had. Let's get it down here. So it's not really, I myself can, on occasion, obviously I can come in here different times a day. Members of the board can't. So they should not be prevented from seeing that. That's all.
Let's go with
let's make
that
that happen.
angle that we've got members that wouldn't be able to see it during regular business hours. That would be our first attempt,
Yeah.
so that you could have that. I had suggested doing it the night of a meeting so that you'd be able to see. We're not gonna just set up, have
Right.
Mrs. Belcher sit here from 5 o'clock on just to.
Absolutely.
Because this is the night I can come in.
Correct.
But a specific time. So let's see what the lawyer says about that.
Yep, that's what I think.
Jen?
My only comment was going to be that, and again, I wasn't part of the board, but I was at that board meeting. Brian, you were chair of that board meeting after the last deliberative session where O'Shaughnessy said that there's no opinion that he gives to the superintendent that can't be shared with the board because I remember the exact wording.
His client is the board.
Right.
It's not- this
We're
client's the
legal
district.
agents
It's not the board.
of
This
the
client is the
board.
district.
And we are the district.
Okay.
Yeah,
We all are the district.
yeah.
We need to get that clarified then, what
Submit.
Like you
what
said,
we
we're
can see
legal-
and what we
our
can't see.
legal-
You're mixing apples and oranges. There's like this, they're all different for different reasons. It's not absolute. It's not
Right. It's
one
not
thing.
one
So
thing.
some of them do involve
When it's
students.
charged to our budget and our line item, it is this board's
It's true.
opinion.
It is true.
So, the Timberlane account is charged when they take care of an employee. You think we should see all of that?
And it may be charged to the SAU, so it's not
No,
necessarily.
I don't see, that's not my concern, me personally.
Me
I'm
neither.
looking for school board type stuff.
Right,
I
that's what
don't
thought
really
you
want to
asked
get,
about. Anything that we're.
I don't really, anything to do with
We
legal
weren't directing
actions with
Michelle.
employees, I don't
Or
wanna
what's
see.
I don't
thing
even think
in
just
the
Unless it
file
involves a board vote.
In which we voted.
I,
We need some clarification then, because I
You weren't at
thought-
the meeting.
I was at, the meeting that Jen is referencing where O'Shaughnessy said the school board is the client of these legal opinions, and we have a right to see these. So I want to know,
Would you like
what
to have him come
opinions
in?
the SAU has, what's the difference between our board and the Timberlane Regional School District? So we can't see things that are district, but we can only see things that are the board? Because I've seen letters that were sent and CC'd to the district, but our board has not seen them.
What?
Yeah, you received it in an email. There are legal letters out there that that
I get a
CC
lot
the
of
district,
emails.
but not the board. So do I, but that's, I mean, when I'm seeing a legal letter as a board member that somebody else is sending to me, I'm pretty flabbergasted.
Doesn't,
A member of the public.
Can you, well, my suggestion is talk to
thank you, Brian.
Jim, and then when in doubt, if O'Shaughnessy wants to come down and
That's, when in
tell
doubt,
us,
let's call him back. So
tell
could
us.
you clarify what
Well,
that,
tell
what
us.
you said that night?
Because I'm very confident that we're entitled to see what involves school board action. I'm like 300% confident of that.
As
So,
long as it's-
and that's really what my concern is, and I think that's pretty much Dr. Farrell's concern, but again, we should be able to do this.
My
We should-
concern is it's not school board action. My concern is when an opinion references the board or a board member,
But that's school board business then.
but it's not an action that we've taken.
But it's school board business.
Taken.
Right. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
'cause you
okay,
were
I'm
saying
sorry. Yeah,
action.
okay,
don't
okay,
think
school
it is.
board business. I'm sorry, wrong term.
Okay.
All set?
That's what happens, gets after 10, I used the wrong term.
Okay, we have two nominations, professional staff, Laurie Bailey, Timberlane Regional High School science teacher, and Amy Valencourt, Atkinson, is a 50% pre-K teacher. So if you could support, a motion to support those two hires.
Motion to accept those two nominations.
Second? We have her before, didn't we? Amy Valencourt?
Is she returning to us?
Didn't we have her before? Well, she was an Atkinson resident, right?
She might have been, she may be returning.
Thought she was.
I don't think
Yeah,
she's-
maybe not.
I don't think so.
Huh.
Let's see here.
No, we got, well,
Oh, she's good.
Okay, we have a nomination on the floor, yes? Second for that? We have a
Brian
second?
seconded that.
Okay, all in favor? It's unanimous.
thank you. We also had a resignation recently, Christina King. She's a middle school ESOL teacher. She's been with us for 1 year. She's employed by another district, and she's part-time here, right? 40%.
Motion to accept the resignation.
Second, Sarah? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
That's
I'd
unanimous.
expected perhaps a question about how we were going to deliver those services without the ESOL teacher, and Mrs. Rasico has a plan to contract out. That was a 40% person. The list is not quite as big as it once was, and so she's got a plan that will fit in the budget, right?
Pretty fancy.
Okay, so we're good. Those services won't.
Until the last minute.
Thank you. That's
Thank
it for
you.
the personnel report.
Committee reports. Sarah, you want to start?
Sure. We had a curriculum and assessment meeting earlier in the week. It was actually fairly short, about an hour. The biggest thing that we went over was, again, just kind of reviewing the grade 6 reporting, the new report cards with the hybrid model. Just touched base again on how that's going to be disseminated to the parents. They're going to be they're working on a parent guide, which is similar to the elementary model that these parents had in 5th grade. So that's going to be familiar to them. The biggest difference is now that we're in 6th grade, they're adding a letter grade instead of just a competency. So it's going to be a hybrid model. They're going to be doing an information night, and they've done a bunch of training with the teachers to show them the additional usage in PowerSchool, this PowerSchool Pro. It gives them extra functionality within the software to kind of drill down into the competencies. They are going to have that parent guide hopefully up in late October is when they said, I think, to match up with their information nights. And There's gonna be a STAR testing letter going home this week as well for parents to kind of outline the dates and the information that they get from the STAR testing, why it's important and how they use that data to focus on their instruction within the classroom. And so that was pretty much it. I think it was a pretty short meeting because the school has just
First
started.
one, yeah.
Yeah. That's all so far.
Danny?
Personnel's met with the TTA. Met today.
Jen?
Policy committee met tonight. An issue did come up that I would like the board to have a discussion about, if I think that's appropriate, but if a policy goes through policy committee and comes back to the board, and the board asks for policy committee to review it again for a particular concern they have, and the policy committee says, nope, we're keeping it as it is, and it comes back to the board again as it is, where do we go from there?
Board makes a change right down there.
They
If we
can.
want to, we can vote on it. We've done it before, so like, if you wanted to change specifically, and Donna used to do this, no, any of that, but there would be something in here that you guys couldn't agree with at policy, you would come up and when you present it, you'd be like, I propose an amendment to change this. And then the board would vote on that, and then that would be implemented into the policy, and then we would vote on it, and that would be it. That's what's happened in the past. We've done it all the time. That's why we do the first read, and then when we come back for second read, we usually, if there needs to be, we make recommendations then and change it right there.
Okay.
I mean, there's been many times we've changed policies on the fly.
I don't think that was the consensus of what we talked about tonight. I thought it was said that it would,
You could keep going back, I said, what would it do, just keep going back and forth? I mean, you
Well,
know,
I mean, sometimes the board,
We've done that.
No, I
sometimes you
would-
could bring something up and say, hey, I really want this to read this, and the board decides, no, we don't want that in there. And that's where it dies, because if the board decides that it doesn't want that in the policy, then that's it, because it's our policy.
okay.
So, I mean, you can make any recommendation you want about policies when we're talking about these policies at any time while we're talking about them, and if the board votes it down, that's final. As far as I'm concerned, that's final, because that's when we do it.
The policy committee should be a recommendation engine
It is.
to this board, and then this board actually adopts what it sees as the best
Right.
in the policy, so it's,
But the board could send it back.
We have.
yeah,
more
we
than
have,
once.
sure, we've sent them, in
and
fact,
we didn't
we did a
even,
couple of
or
those.
we don't
'cause
even have to send it back, period. We could decide to make our own changes there. and-
There's
and-
sometimes
second read.
that we don't know the laws and stuff, so then we send it back to policy with the caveat of
More
look up the
input.
law, and go from there, but. We
I
do
think it's
this.
important to hear the policy committees, the people in that policy committee that are not school board, because they're the ones that are working the policy, I want to hear why, I think it's okay that way, and bring that back to the board. They think this because, we think this way because, and we can make our own mind up.
I agree it's important to hear from the people doing the work, but in policy committee, we're in a situation where policy is a large function of what the board does, and in policy committee, the board is a minority on that committee. The committee is very heavy with administrators and very light with school board members.
We found out from the New Hampshire School Board when they were here, and when we told them some of the numbers that we had in our committees, they were,
Depending on the
surprised.
size of the school district, you have a couple of people.
So Jen, I guess, if you have a problem with a policy that's coming up for the next one, right? Make it known when we do the first read. I want this change. The policy
Well, the board,
committee.
it already
Policy-
came for first read, and the board already cited their reasons for sending it back to committee.
And we take
Which policy was that? Didn't I send that back?
The bidding
made the motion?
policy.
the bidding policy. We sent it back,
Mhm.
but really, it was a while ago, nobody in there could remember why, and we don't have the minutes that show.
Oh, that was something different. That was a different, the bidding policy was sent back to look at the,
Oh, the superintendent phrase, the
yes,
paragraph.
and look
about
at
the
what is the
superintendent.
sample policy language, yes.
So I guess what's the problem with that? Is it not,
It'll come back to the board for second read,
It's gonna
the
come
exact
back
way it came for first read.
Okay, then we make
It'll
changes.
come back, and then we'll talk
This
about
board
it here.
sees-
Just bring it
well,
up
it will
when
be
it comes
another
up.
first read, won't it? Or no, it'll be a
Comes
second
back.
It'd
read.
be come
No, it
back.
comes back for first read.
Yeah, since we
Back
sent
again.
it
It's
back.
coming back for a first read.
So then we could talk
Okay.
about it again openly here, and
Right, whatever issues there are.
The policy committee doesn't think it's a good recommendation, whether you send it back, that's the policy committee's recommendation.
Right.
So, we're gonna give you what we think is the best practice. If you choose a different practice, that's the board's prerogative.
But tonight in policy committee, when I asked that question, what happens, I was told that it's up to policy committee.
No.
So the board can send
No.
it back. It's not, the
Board-
policy committee doesn't make the policies. No one said that. I was in the room.
You were there.
They never said that.
but I said it could go back and forth until something finally
If
gave.
you have an issue, bring it up when you present the policies.
Okay.
And then the board can decide what they want to do with it.
Thank you, Dan.
That's how I see it being done, and it has been done, so.
Brian, anything?
Nope.
Sean? Kim?
Two quick things, back to Jen's point on the membership of the committees. That, which is policy BDE, if we were gonna wanna take a look at that to reconfigure the committee so that we have some sort of different membership, that, I think what we would wanna do would be to suspend a policy and bring that to the board immediately instead of going to policy committee. I don't know, that might be an option. The other thing I wanted to ask about was, I did read somewhere that there's now a computer science requirement for high school students coming on board. Is that correct at some point?
We're working on it.
Talked about
We can
that.
When is that effective?
We talked about it at curriculum.
In the spring, we talked about it
We
briefly.
talked it in the spring about it.
When's the effective date of, when does it have to be implemented
You know what,
in
I'll
the
check on it.
curriculum?
Yeah.
I'll check on it. I don't have those notes with me, so.
Because, and again, I've
Committees.
raised this before, and we're now looking probably at another half credit requirement at the high school. We're over credit requirements in some areas, so I'd like to see that if that's gonna be a requirement, that we look at our other credit requirements.
I'll specifically get that date for you, Kim. They didn't see it. Wow, it was, Mr. Pedersen that gave that information.
He said he was following it closely, and then I remember there was gonna be some titling.
Yeah, I didn't
And
think it was
stuff,
done
but
yet, set
no.
in stone yet, but I'll come back.
Yeah.
If you can hang on, I'll bring that back to you as soon as I can get the information for
They
you.
were following it closely, though, and he
Yeah,
felt
they
that they,
were into it.
yeah.
I attended the CIP meeting last night. We had some good discussion about what I call the kind of meshing together of the strategic plan, how that can support CIP, how CIP can support strategic plan. In fact, I wrote as one of my notes about the strategic plan that we probably should, the CIP people should absolutely have a copy when we get this all done, and use that it helps to support CIP projects back and forth, so, we did that last night. I was at CNA, thanks Sarah. Next week is safety and facilities meetings, that's in the morning. I'm going to some training up in Concord.
Yep.
Next week, New Hampshire School Boards Association training, I've been dying to go to one of those, so I'm gonna go up to those next week. I think that's it. Vendor and payroll thing has gone around, read. Any other business? John?
Yeah, we had the document, the MS-25 and DOE-25 were sent on out to the board to come down for signature. And I would like to actually understand why don't we include that document in the mailing that we sent on out, that's sent to us, so that we could review it, so that we just gotta come down here and sign it. What I actually had to do is come down here, then look at the documents. I spent about a half hour, 25 minutes here. Signed the document. I was the fifth one to sign it. So now we met the quorum of the board. Now we can send it. Then I just wanted to get a copy of it, of what I signed, and I had to pay per page.
Okay,
It just, I'm filling my statutory requirements of coming down here to sign this, and I just want it for my records of what I have. If
Yeah.
I had it emailed to me and the whole board, it'd just be so much more efficient and streamlined.
so you still have to come sign it.
Yes,
you want
but
to
I would have been able to
study it.
review it
Gotcha,
there.
gotcha.
I wouldn't have had to pay $12.50 for all 25 pages of it for my records. I'd have my email, I'd be able to see it, reference it, and so forth, just like I'm do now with the paper copy of it.
We can follow that and find out so that was the
The DOE.
MS 25? 25.
Any sort of form like that we're being asked to sign that is obviously readily available in an electronic copy or could easily be printed and scanned, which is basically the same thing, and sent so that you can review it when you've got the time instead of having to spend yet maybe another half an hour out of a work day for somebody who's working 8 to 4:30 out of their work time, as opposed to when they can do it on and off hour. I don't understand why can we not get those?
Okay, well,
That's an easy, can't we
It's
get an
SAU
answer to that
function.
question now?
It's an SAU function.
What does that mean, Sue?
It means it's a function of the SAU.
I don't how does that answer the question? Can you explain to me, Sue, how that answers that question?
So the form that we signed was a Timberlane form.
Correct.
But
For
I just-
Timberline, it says DRA requirement and a Board of
It was the
Education
one that
requirement.
we had to do. So are there restrictions on whether or not that can be obviously protected and PDF'd so that you can't change the numbers or anything like that? But why can't that be emailed out so that people could study it?
I don't know, we'll have to check with Jeff.
We've got to check.
Check with the SAU, CFO.
I'd be happy to find that out. Why can't we see it and study it? And then you'd have a record of it. You still have to come
I
down
mean,
here and sign it.
anybody could call right up now and do a right-to-know request to grab
Get
the
it now.
document. It should
After
actually be
it's
posted, as soon as it's generated, it should be
After it's-
posted on our SharePoint so that we could all look at it, including the members of the public.
After it's signed, it would go on the public stuff. Yes, we hadn't, I believe so. After it's signed, it could be, anyone can get a copy of it, I would believe.
Not before it's signed.
Not before it's signed. So you're looking at a copy of it before it's totally signed. If we're sending it over to you to study, and I understand you want to study it, it was a big document. Let's ask Jeff. I'll pursue.
I believe it's work product
Work
until it's
product,
signed.
yeah. Well, let's ask Jeff,
It
make
seems
sure
like
that.
it's a big
what-
barrier. That's what it really feels like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Kim?
I'd
Wouldn't
like to
expect
make a
nothing less.
motion to reimburse Sean $12.50 for the copy of a form that he's taking his time, never mind, I'm just gonna
No,
make
I
a
appreciate
motion
the-
to
I appreciate
reimburse
the
for
gesture.
$12.50.
I would rather keep the receipt for our memorabilia.
I think it's, it's a document that as a board member, he's gonna wanna go back and review, and which I would personally like a copy of as we move through the budget season.
Well, why don't you pay Sean it, Sean? Is she got a
It's funny,
second for her
but
motion?
it's also, it's a sign of being, it's sort of pathetic in a way, in my opinion, so.
I can tell
just
you what,
wanna-
that would never happen with a board member in our town if they
Okay,
came in and
okay.
wanted a document that they're trying to do their elected duty
I'll
to
second.
get.
Any other discussion? All in favor of reimbursing Sean?
I'm abstaining.
Motion passes. One abstention? Anything else? Jen?
Maybe I should have brought it up under the budget discussion, but just wanting to know if we can think about going into this year's budget season, student activity accounts or funds or how that's handled. I know last year there was some conversation, I think, about several times different groups
Yeah,
come up.
yep.
And is there a way to set up
Student activity funds.
almost like fundraising, but similar to what the different athletic groups do, I think music, TMA,
Yep.
does some things like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
but something for some of these other groups, I think, student government and Destination, there was a STEM-related one or
Destination
something.
Imagination.
Yeah. mhm.
Yeah, some of those. Certainly look into it. Danny?
I just have a quick question, Madam Chair. The resource officer was on the agenda and then it wasn't,
Oh, right.
I thought. Unless I read the wrong one, I don't remember.
No, you're right, it was on
Okay.
it was on this
I just-
agenda
I-
earlier,
I
now it's
know
not.
I asked, I care that it's off, but not, just wanna make sure it's not on the back burner, that's all.
We let that drop between,
We do not let it drop. We were asked to take it off by the Pleasantville Police Department.
oh,
Oh, perfect, that's good enough
I'm
for me.
thinking I take off.
Good enough for me.
They weren't ready to support that right now.
It's fine.
Something else. Sean?
Budget. When are we gonna expect our first rev of the budget?
Oh, we should ask that when Jeff was here. Ask Jeff that. When should we expect
The first draft of the budget? 'Cause
Which budget?
the total budget?
The proposed budget.
Proposed
We're supposed to, the first
Okay,
draft of it.
The proposed budget. When do you suspect we'd have a draft of the proposed budget? I'll ask him that.
We should be giving, this board should be giving a recommendation to the budget committee.
They're starting, Brian, they're starting to meet, right? And see budgets? They have created a schedule for who they're gonna see and when.
They have created that schedule.
They have, okay.
Yes, they have.
We spoke about that at the CIP meeting last night.
Did they change it up?
I don't know, we didn't see it in
Seems
writing.
to be a moving goalpost there.
Oh, yeah.
This night, they'll see these budgets and see that.
Okay.
But I'll ask that question, Sean, see what I can get for an answer. Any other business? Kim?
This came up during the CIP last night on Sandown North, Sandown Central. Just kind of curious as to where they stand with their enrollments and what we're looking at, because we were looking at planning out, and, you know, at one point, there was discussion about having to reshift students. I know we're okay for a year or two, but I think in terms of planning, that we should be revisiting that periodically to see, because it's something that's a big budget item, should we have to make a move.
Okay.
And it would have to be planned, if it's next year, we have to plan it into this year's
Right.
budget.
I think that's a Christie question, and probably facilities and. Okay. Anything else? If not,
I'm sorry, one more thing. I know we had the TTA here, but I think that we have not had the TSSU here in a long time. I know Brian and I were gonna have them in at some point, but I don't know if we can have the TSSU come in sometime? I don't
Come
think-
in
I meet with
and
them monthly, they said they'd let you know when they felt they were comfortable to come in.
Okay. Just wanna make sure
Smaller
we're.
They were
group.
invited,
Fine,
right?
fair.
Correct?
Okay.
they were invited.
They just they didn't feel the need to come.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll ask them, I have a meeting coming up with them soon, right?
It's fine, I just wanna make sure they have the opportunity.
I'm calling adjourned. Thank you very much.